Hey guys, how are you all? I hope you all are doing well. Today we are going to see an amazing what-if story. But before we start, it's just a humble request that if you are new here, please subscribe because it actually motivates me a lot to post more. Also, the stories on my channel are fully written by me, so if you have any suggestions for what-if stories, please let me know below the comment section. Now, without any further delay, let's start. What if Harry Potter dated Veela? The great oak doors swing wide and cold air rolls into the great hall. Candles sway. The smell of roast lamb and pumpkin fades under a sharp breath of winter, and every head turns toward the entrance. Beauxbatons glides in like a single thought. Pale blue robes, pearls at cuffs, boots that do not seem to mark the stone. At their head stands Madame Maxime, tall and grave, her gaze cutting across 4 long tables that scrape as students push up to see. Harry feels the change before he understands it. A pressure, soft and bright, touches the edges of his thoughts. It is not a hand. It is not a voice. It is a pull, the kind that makes you forget what you came here to do. The hall goes looser and louder. Benches creak. A boy from Hufflepuff stands without meaning to. A Ravenclaw drops a spoon and does not pick it up. Ron makes a sound that is not a word. At the center of it all, a girl steps into the candlelight. White gold hair. Skin that takes the light and gives it back. Fleur Delacour. Harry has seen her at the Quidditch World Cup. But this is different. The air is thick around her. A slow hum sits behind his ribs. The hum fades. It is like the feeling you get when you are about to slip on wet stone and then your foot finds the edge and holds. Passes through his scar and stops. Like rain on glass. Harry blinks. He can still hear himself think. He can still hear the plates clink and the buzz of voices and the soft scrape of Hermione taking notes she does not need to take. He looks back at Fleur, and she looks up as if she felt him look. Across the bench, Ron stares. His mouth is open. He is leaning forward, elbows past his plate, gravy on his sleeve. Mate, Harry says under his breath. Ron does not answer. Hermione sets her quill down. There is a smear of ink on her finger. She looks at Ron, then at Harry, then at the Beauxbatons girls as they pass the Gryffindor table. Do not say anything, Hermione says through her teeth. I was not going to, Harry says. You were. I could hear it leave your head. A group of boys from Slytherin rise at once. One stumbles into another. A shove. A hiss. The pressure in the room tightens like a belt pulled 1 notch too far. Harry stands. He does not remember making the choice, only the sense that if he does not move, something stupid will happen and no one will like the ending. He steps between 2 boys who have decided they both need to walk at the exact same time. He holds up a hand. Give them room, he says. Just room. You can look without climbing over each other. The boys blink like he has spoken a language they do not know. The pull loosens a fraction. The Beauxbatons line passes. Fleur's eyes flick over him. They are light, but there is something steady there. Not ice, not fire. A count, a measure. She looks away before it becomes a stare. Ron leans in until his shoulder presses Harry's arm. Did you see her? He breathes. Yes. There is no point trying to talk to Ron. Harry looks down the table. Ginny is smiling at something a 3rd year says, but her hand tightens on her fork when she looks toward the door. Across the aisle, Fred and George run a silent bet with finger taps and raised brows. Hermione watches the head table. Dumbledore is smiling the way he always smiles when there is a storm he thinks he can handle. The Durmstrang lot crowd in a moment later with their own entrance and their own kind of silence. A dark figure steps past a torch. The light catches on a pale face and then the face is gone. The hall swallows the new arrivals and the old noise returns in jolts. Harry sits. His heart is steady. The pressure is still there, like a note from a flute 3 rooms away, but it does not run his hands or his mouth. Ron wipes his sleeve with his napkin and misses. She looked right at you, Ron whispers. She looked at all of us, mate. No, at you. You did not even flinch. How are you doing that? Hermione pushes a bread roll at Ron. Eat, then talk, she says. Ron eats and talks anyway. It is like I forgot my own name, he says. For a second. I think I told my brain to jump out the window. Do not joke about that, Hermione says. I am not. I mean it. I would have if she asked. I would have said thank you on the way down. Harry takes a drink of pumpkin juice. The glass is cold in his hand. He can hear his heartbeat in his ears. He does not know if Fleur did anything on purpose. He does not think it matters. The hall feels like summer heat on a day when you already have a fever. He can feel the line where it touches him and the line where it stops. You are overreacting, Hermione says, but her voice is thin. Harry glances at the head table. Madame Maxime has a hand on the back of a chair. Fleur stands one step behind her. She is listening without looking like she is listening. It is a trick Harry knows. You watch with the corner of your eye. You make sure you know who knows you are there. He looks away when Fleur's eyes come back. He does not want to be rude. He also does not want to lie. He is not unaffected. He is not made of stone. His mind just refuses to follow the part of the air that tells him to forget himself. He looks at Hermione. You feel it too, he says. Of course I do. I am not blind. It is not what you think. It is enchantment shaped like attention. It scrapes the top of your thoughts. It tries to smooth everything down so you stop asking questions. And yours did not smooth, Ron says to Harry. Harry wants to say I do not know. He also wants to tell the truth. He picks at a mark in the table. I think it tried, he says. It hit something and slid. That is all. That is not all, Hermione says. Her eyes are sharp now. You should not say that out loud where anyone can hear. Not until I read. I want to see if there is a reason. A reason for what? For why you can hear yourself. Later, when the food charmed itself away and the candlesticks dropped an inch, when the benches scraped again and the doors swung and the hall broke into streams of robes and noise, Harry found himself walking the long curve of a corridor toward the library without deciding to. He does not plan to find her. He plans to be where it is quiet for a moment, where parchment smells like dust and lemon oil and there is a clock that clicks and no one tries to sell him a headline. He turns past a suit of armor and nearly walks into a girl who already knew he was there. You are in my way, Fleur says. Her voice is clear and low. Not cold. Not soft. If there is enchantment in it. Harry hears only the words. Sorry, he says. He steps back. She does not move. She looks at him like she is waiting for him to do a trick. Her eyes run over his face. His scar tingles once and stops. You looked at me in the hall, she says. Everyone looked at you, Harry says. Not like that. How did I look? Like you could not be bothered. Harry shakes his head. That is not it. Then say what it is. He could lie. He could say he did not notice. He could say he was tired or that he had a headache or that someone kicked him under the table. He does not. It would be wrong, and he is not good at it when someone is this close. Felt like something pushed, he says. It did not go in. Her mouth tilts. Not a smile. You make it sound simple. It was not. Why does it not work on you? I do not know. Maybe it does, and I do not know what that means. Fleur's head leans the smallest degree to one side. Her hair moves like water with no wind. She is not doing anything with her hands. He is watching. Most boys do not say maybe, she says. I say it a lot. Yes. Here. You hear. There is a half step in her stance. Like a dancer who has already chosen the next beat. She is closer and the air warms. You did not want to fall over for me, she says. No. You did not want to run. Also no. Then you wanted what? To hear you talk. Without the other part. The part that made Ron forget he had a plate. She looks past him. The corridor is empty. The library doors are shut. In the silence he can hear a quill ticking under the door like a beetle. And what do you hear, Potter? My name is Harry. I know your name. Then use it. She studies him the way someone studies a map they do not trust. Then she steps past him and pushes the library door with 2 fingers. Inside, the high windows hold a thin blue light and the lamp over Madame Pance's desk glows like a hidden ember. The smell of dust and polish is clean and old. It is a room where people have thought hard for a long time. Fleur walks to a table and sets a hand on a chair but does not sit. You can tell your friend to stop hiding behind the end cap, she says. Hermione rounds the shelf, cheeks warm. I was not hiding, she says. I was surveying. From behind a stack of books, Ron whispers. Do not say anything stupid, Hermione says without looking at him. Too late, Ron says. Harry pulls out the chair across from Fleur and sits. Fleur sits last. Talk then, she says to Harry. Tell me what you think is happening. He swallows. His mouth is dry. He is very aware that she could leave. He is very aware that the room is quiet enough to hear the clock. It feels like when someone tries to throw a spell through a shield, he says. It hits and spreads and goes thin and then drains away. That is not how it works, Hermione says. You do not know how it works either, Ron hisses. Fleur raises a hand. Not a warning. A hold. Let him speak, she says. Harry looks at the table. The wood is worn smooth by years of hands. He thinks of the last time he felt magic reach him without a wand. He thinks of a voice that was not a voice and a cold that bit his lungs and a lake and a graveyard and a stream of green light. He feels his stomach tighten. I have had things in my head before, he says, steady. They did not stay long. Fleur listens. She does not blink too much. She does not fidget. She does not fill the pause. It is the first sign that she is not just beautiful. She knows how to listen to the words and not only the air around them. Hermione pulls a book toward her and runs a finger down a page she has already read. The effect is not about sex, she says to no one in particular. It is attention. It is a compulsion for focus. It is stronger with movement and voice. There is no text that says a person cannot resist it. There is also no text that says someone like you should. Someone like me, Harry says. Yes. Someone who fought a curse that no one resists by thinking of who they are. Ron leans his elbows on the table, then jerks them back when Madame Pants clears her throat from across the hall without raising her head. So he is fine, Ron says. Brilliant. Can we go? I feel like my teeth are floating. Fleur looks at Ron as if she is deciding whether to answer the part he said or the part he did not. This is not my fault, she says. I did not say it was. You make a face like it is. I make faces when I am awake, Ron mutters. Hermione kicks him under the table. The kick says, do not get us banned from the library again. Ron rubs his shin and glares at a book. Fleur turns back to Harry. You are not afraid of me, she says. I am not afraid of you. I am watching you. Because everyone else is not watching you. They are watching a story they told themselves when you walked in. What story? That you belong to them. That you are here for them. That you are a mirror. Fleur looks away. The look is quick and sharp, like something cracked and then was smooth again. I am not a mirror, she says. I know. They sit with that for a moment. The clock ticks. Madame Pants shifts a paper and it sounds like sand. Fleur draws a breath. I did not ask to bring trouble to your house, she says. It is not my house, Harry says. It is only a school. Ron snorts a laugh and covers it with a cough. The pressure in the room is less now. Where Harry is used to it. He is not sure which. He can think in a straight line. He can feel his own hands. He can tell when he is about to say something that will sound like a joke when it is not one. I am sorry about earlier, he says. For what? For telling people to give you room. It was not my place. It was your place if I could not breathe, she says. I could not breathe. Then thank you for not biting my head off. I could, she says. The corner of her mouth moves again. I do not think you would like me when I do. Ron makes a strangled sound. Hermione does not look up from her book. Fleur stands. I will not ask you how you do it, she says. Not today. But I will ask you this. When you look at me, do you see me? Yes. Not the magic. No. Then we can talk again. She turns and walks for the door. She does not look back. The air behind her settles the way water settles after a skiff passes and the ripples find the shore and turn to dark glass. Ron exhales like he has been underwater. I think my brain is back, he says. It hurts. Hermione shuts her book. She will test you again, she says to Harry. She has to. If you are the first person she has met who will not fold, she needs to know what that means. I did not say I would not fold, Harry says. I said I can hear what she says. That is why I am worried, Hermione says. Harry looks at the door where Fleur had vanished and feels the place where the pressure had tried to climb in and make itself useful. It is not empty. It is awake. Later that night, after towers turned black against a thin moon and the common room burned low and the portrait hole swung like a tired jaw, Harry lay with his arms behind his head and listened to the hush of sleeping breaths. The castle clicked and settled. A log collapsed in the grate. He could still smell her perfume, something clean with a little smoke at the end, as if a garden had been set near a fire and refused to burn. He did not sleep long. A scrape in the dark woke him. A book slid against a shelf. He sat up and blinked until the shapes in the room found their edges. Hermione sat at the table near the window with 3 open books and ink on her wrist. She looked up when he moved. "I did not want to wait until morning," she said softly. "You do not have to fix it tonight," Harry says. "I am not fixing. I am understanding. There is a difference." She taps a paragraph with the back of her quill. "There are pieces here that make sense. Mind fog that is not the same as a curse. Focus pull that can be interrupted by pain or shock. Power that stacks when there are more of them in a room. It is all very neat until it touches you. Then it stops being neat. Maybe it is not about me," Harry says. "Everything is about you right now," Hermione says, and she does not say it like a compliment. She says it like a fact that breaks cups. He looks back at the fire. "I do not want it to be. You do not get to want." He laughs once. "Quiet. You sound like Professor McGonagall." "I will take that as a compliment." Ron snores. A pillow hits him in the face from a lower bunk. He turns over and snores again, softer. Hermione closes one book and opens another. "There is something else," she says. "About Veela clans. About leaving their family circles. It is rare. It is usually for a reason. What kind of reason? I do not know yet." Harry rubs his scar with the heel of his hand. "It does not hurt. It is just a place where the world tends to knock first." "I told her my name," he says. "You did. I asked her to use it." "Good." He waits for Hermione to tell him he is being foolish. She does not. She turns a page and the sound is a dry whisper. "I am going back to the library first thing," she says. "I want to know what happens to the air around her when she is angry. Because I do not want you in the middle of a crowd the next time a room forgets itself." Harry nods. The fire pops. He lies back and closes his eyes and waits for sleep that does not come for a long time. In the morning, the castle is cold and bright. The lake looks like slate and the sky looks like it wants to snow but cannot yet make up its mind. Classes slide past in a string of tasks and voices. Harry hears the words and does the work and says the right things to the right teachers, but his head is not in any one room for long. At lunch, Colin Creevey nearly drops a camera into a tureen when Fleur crosses the far end of the hall. At dinner, a 6th year from Hufflepuff forgets to let go of a goblet and holds it while he stares until his fingers go white. People start to give the Beauxbatons girls a small clear lane as if they are carrying something breakable. The small clear lane sometimes becomes a gap, and the gap sometimes becomes a ring. It is not their fault. It is not anyone's fault. It is a thing that happens to the air when they move. Harry watches for the places where it goes wrong. He steps in when someone looks like they are about to do something that will hurt and calls it manners. He tries to do it without speaking too loud. By late evening, he needs quiet again. The library is low-lit and warm from bodies and lamps. Madame Pants has a blanket around her shoulders and a way of turning the page that suggests the page should be grateful. Harry does not plan to see Fleur there. He thinks she would avoid the stacks after the whispering she left behind at lunch. He is wrong. She is at the far table with a book she is not reading. The cover says charms, but the way she is looking at the paper says her mind is elsewhere. She lifts her eyes when he stops a few steps away. "You are following me," she says. "I live here," he says. "The library, I mean. You live in the library. Not with a bed. With a head." She does not smile. She looks at him as if she is measuring the distance between the words he says and the thing he means. Then she shuts the book and slides it away from her. "Sit then," she says. He sits. He waits. He does not want to crowd her with questions. He does not want to make her do tricks. She breaks the quiet first. "My mother says people mistake attention for love," she says. "She says the first is a wind and the second is a house. Your mother is right. You say that like you have tried to live in the wind." "I have." "How is that? Cold. And loud. And you never know where to put your hands." She looks at his hands. They are flat on the table. He pulls them back into his lap. "You wanted to hear me talk," she says. "Yes." "Then hear this. I do not want to be a storm in your house." He looks at her and sees the sharp line of worry she hides at the corner of her mouth. Then do not, he says. It is not always my choice. I know. If it were only me, I would say stop looking at me like a game and let me be a girl who reads and argues and gets cross when people are stupid. But it is not only me. What else is it? Family. Law. Things that do not care how I feel. He hears the word law and sees parchment and ink and a woman in pink with a sweet voice and a list of rules that cut skin thinner than a curse. He does not know why Fleur would carry that in a sentence like a stone in a pocket. He files it away. I cannot fix the world in one night, he says. I did not ask you to. Good. Because I cannot. I can only say that when I look at you, I am not looking at a wind. She breathes out and the knot at the corner of her mouth loosens. Not a smile. Not yet. Something that could be the start of one with time. You are a strange boy, Harry Potter, she says. I get that a lot. I think you mean it when you say things. I do. That will make your life hard. It already did. They sit with that truth on the table between them. Feels heavy and right. Hermione appears at the next table without a sound. Drops a book the size of a paving stone, and nods once at Harry. Found references, she says. We can talk later. Fleur looks from Hermione to Harry and back. Your friend is loyal, she says. He knows. Fleur stands. She adjusts her sleeve. She looks at Harry for a long second. Then she leans down, not close enough to turn the air into a thick thing again, and says one word in a voice that is only a voice. Thank you. For what? For hearing me, she says, and then she is gone, and the library is only a room with books again. Harry stares at the place where she stood until the shape of it fades and there is only wood and dust. He lets out a breath he did not know he was holding. He feels a drip of warmth behind his scar that turns to nothing and is gone. Hermione sets the heavy book down and opens to a marked page. I do not want you alone with her if someone decides to be brave and stupid at the same time, she says without looking up. I know you do not need a chaperone. I am not offering to be one. I am saying the school is a pot with the lid on. Do not put your hand in it for fun. Understood, Harry says. Good. Now read this paragraph. He leans in. The words are dry and formal. They talk about attention and binding and the way some kinds of magic feel like a song you cannot get out of your head and some kinds feel like a bell that calls you inside yourself. There is a note in the margin. Hermione must have written it hours ago. Ask about anger, the note says. Ask what happens when someone throws a rock into the water. Harry closes the book. I will ask, he says. Ask what? Ron says, slumping into the chair on Harry's other side with a plate of toast he must have stolen from the kitchens. Never mind, Hermione says. Eat. Then sit in silence while we think. Ron eats. Then he sits in silence for almost a minute, which is a record. A shadow moves at the far end of the stacks. Harry looks up. It is nothing he can name. A robe. A whisper. A shape that does not belong to a student. It is gone before he can stand. Did you see that? He says. Hermione follows his eyes. She does not ask what. She only nods. We are not alone in this, she says. The clock in the library clicks once. The sound is small and final. End of scene. The morning starts sharp and wet. The lawn shines with a thin film of dew. Hagrid has dragged half the paddock into a maze of pens and stakes and smoking troughs. The smell is part mud, part singed rope. Care of magical creatures is never quiet. Today it breathes and pops. All right there, gather up, Hagrid says, clapping once. He points a glove at a covered crate that rattles on the far side of the fence. Whole school spirit and such. Madame Maxime said a few of her girls could observe. No touchin'. Observe. The Beauxbatons students hang back at the rail. Light blue robes. Calm faces. Fleur Delacour stands in front, hands behind her back. The air leans toward her and then thinks better of it. Harry feels the pull come and go like a wave that does not find the shore. Ron groans when the crate knocks itself sideways. Please say it is not the Scroots, he says. It is the Scroots, Hermione says, scanning a page of notes. She keeps her voice level. I want to see how they behave in the cold. Behave, Hagrid says, beaming. That is the spirit. He whips off the tarpaulin. The blast-ended Scroots clatter over each other. Shells smoking, tails twitching with little coughs of fire. One tries to climb aboard and slides down with a squeal. Someone in the back swears. Someone else laughs and then apologizes. Pears, Hagrid says, pointing. We will try the gentle approach today. Feed in and observe the tail vents. Potter, you and Delacour take the long pen. We do not want them near the lake again. Harry looks up. Fleur is already watching him. Not a challenge. A question. He nods. She steps through the gate, light on her feet, as if the ground minds itself around her boots. Harry enters behind and shuts the latch. The Scroots bump the boards and leave black streaks. They are worse up close. Ron calls from the next pen. He says it like he is giving a weather report from the end of the world. Fleur does not smile. She kneels and sets a tin dish on the dirt. The nearest Scroot sniffs, decides the dish is an insult, and flips it. The food skids into the mud. Fleur stands again. She brushes her hands clean with quick, neat motions. They are angry, she says. Always, Harry says. He keeps his wand ready at his side and tries to look like he is not keeping his wand ready at his side. Hagrid leans on the fence. They need warmth, he says. They are not meant for this chill. Nice calm voices. No sudden moves. A Scroot coughs flame at the mud and makes a sad little hiss when it dies in the wet. Fleur flinches a fraction. Not fear. A twitch like a match nearly caught. Harry sees it. He looks at her, then away so she does not feel pinned. We can try a shield to keep the heat around them, he says, quiet. She thinks. She looks at the Scroots, then at his wand, then at his face. You try, she says. No problem. He draws a slow breath and sets the shape of the spell right where it should sit. The wand is sure in his hand. Protego, he says. The shield hums into life, pale and neat. A loose bowl over the near end of the pen. The air under it warms at once. The Scroots huddle into the spot like dogs finding a patch of sun. Hagrid beams. There now, he says. Teamwork. Fleur watches the shimmer of the shield. Her shoulders let go a little. What if we try them one at a time, Harry says. Smaller circle. Less stress. She nods again. They move together. It should be clumsy to sync their steps, but it is not. Harry shifts and she shifts. She pauses when he does. They do not speak. The Scroots rattle and spit and then quiet under the light. Fleur crouches and sets another dish. This time the nearest Scroot sniffs and eats. It is not pretty. It is progress. Hagrid whoops. You see, he says to the class at large. You speak to the nature of a thing, and you meet it where it is. Fleur glances up at that. There is a small change in her face, as if a word landed where it was supposed to land for once. She says nothing. They settle into a patient rhythm. Harry moves the shield where she points. Fleur places feed where he leaves a space. The creatures stop charging the boards and work at the food. The smell is worse. The noise is better. Hermione edges along the fence till she is close enough to speak without shouting. The shield changed the heat signature, she says under her breath. Did you feel a pull when you cast? A pull from what, Harry says. From her, Hermione says without looking at Fleur. She keeps her eyes on the nearest Scroot. A tug line. Heavier air inside the shield. Harry tries not to look at Fleur either. Yes, he says. A little. Fleur answers without turning her head. I felt it too, she says. Short. Like a knot that holds. Nothing more. Hermione's eyes brighten. She is about to ask 6 questions. She gives herself one. Any drain, she says. Not yet, Harry says. Fleur shifts her weight. She is looking at the Scroots, but Harry can tell her attention is pulled to the way his magic sits like a quiet wall beside her. You did not push at me, she says. No, I held the shape. You filled it with heat. Yes. They finish the session with only one small fire when a Scroot sneezes. Hagrid stomps it out with a wet sack, grinning as if the sack has done him a favor. Good work, he says. That is the spirit. When the class ends, the air feels lighter. The Beauxbatons girls glide away with polite nods. Fleur lingers by the gate and watches Harry fix the latch. Her hair gathers the pale sun and sends it back the way dew does on a cold morning. Thank you, she says. That was not showy. It was useful. I like useful, he says. Yes, I see that. Ron staggers over with a smear of ash on his cheek. I smell like a fireplace, he says. You smell like victory, Harry says. Hermione writes 3 lines in tight script, then caps her ink. I am going to the library, she says. The shield did something odd to the ambient air. I want to chart it. I need to understand the field size that triggers her reactions. Ron groans again. We just got out of class. This is not class, Hermione says. This is keeping both of you alive. She leaves before Ron can complain in full. Ron rubs his face with his sleeve. So, lunch, he says. In a minute, Harry says. Ron looks from Harry to Fleur and back. His mouth opens. He closes it. He nods once in a way that says he is trying. Right, he says. I will save you a spot. He wanders toward the castle, humming under his breath. Fleur watches him go. Then she looks at Harry. He is afraid for you, she says. He is afraid of a lot of things, Harry says. He stops being afraid. Then it comes back. What are you afraid of? He looks at the empty pen. He looks at his hands. I am afraid of getting it wrong, he says. I am afraid of people who say they know what is best for me. A small sound escapes her that is not quite a laugh. We have that in common, she says. They walk back toward the courtyard. Quiet. Students pour past them. The fountain is a low rush of water. The flag with the school crest tugs and snaps on the pole. The sky is a pale lid. Threatens snow and then thinks better of it. They choose a bench near the old stone balustrade. No one sits within a long arm's reach. It is not fear. It is the space that happens around Fleur when people are trying not to look like they are looking. Tell me the story of your basilisk, she says. You said you fought things that make others afraid. He shifts on the bench. He does not reach for grand words. He keeps it plain. I was 12. The school was under attack. There was a monster in the pipes. A girl died years before. There was a diary. I went down there with a teacher who was a fraud. I lost him. I met the real memory of the man who wants me dead. The basilisk came. I killed it with a sword that appeared when I needed it. I almost died. I did not. Fleur listens with her hands folded. She does not make a face when he says 12. She does not say that it sounds impossible. She does not say he is brave. She lets him finish. That is a very clean telling of a very messy day, she says. It was messy, he says, and leaves it there. She looks toward the lake. There is a story in my family, she says. When we are away from the circle, sometimes the fire listens to us too closely. I grew up inside a place where the air knows our voices. Here, the air does not know me. Tries to catch up. It makes mistakes. What kind of mistakes? When I am tired. When I am angry. When I am scared. It answers too fast. She rubs her thumb against the edge of the stone bench. Her hands are steady. Her eyes are not. What happens, Harry says. I burn things I did not mean to burn. He nods once. Then we should stay away from banners, he says. She glances up at the flag. It snaps and settles. She almost smiles. Too late, she says. The day slides forward. Classes. Hallway noise. The drum of feet on stone. The low chant of a weather that will not commit. Near dusk, they cross the courtyard again. Voices carry. Someone has a stack of rules for visitors and reads them out as a joke. 3 third-years chase a charmed paper that skitters like a mouse. A prefect shouts about library hours. Fleur stops mid-step. The turn in her body is small. Harry feels the change before he sees it. The air tightens. The edge of the flag flutters and then takes light for a second. He looks at her face. Her jaw is set. Her breathing flattens. Her eyes are on nothing Harry can see. Talk to me, he says low. I received a letter, she says. Said soon. From who? Family. What do they want? Her mouth works. The word does not want to be in the air. Proof, she says. The light at the edge of the flag brightens again. The stone under their feet warms. A boy at the far side of the yard says ow and shakes his fingers as his quill warps. Fleur takes a breath that sticks. Not here, she says. Not like this. Harry steps in and sets his hand over hers where it grips the bench. He does not squeeze. He lets his palm sit warm and steady. Breathe with me, he says. She stares at their hands as if they are not hers. He breathes in slow. He breathes out slow. He waits for her to match. She does. The flag stops trying to burn. The stone cools a little. The moment breaks when a banner over the arch catches. The fire whispers along its edge and then takes. Fast and clean. Someone shouts. Harry snaps his wand up. Protego, he says. The shield flips up and domes the nearest spill of sparks. The fire hits the curve of it and skates, then gutters and dies. A shower of black flakes patters onto the flagstones. Fleur jerks as if pulled by a string and then is still. Sweat beads at her hairline. Her throat works around a swallow that drags. I did not choose that, she says, voice rough. I know, Harry says. I hate that it uses me to frighten people. You did not frighten me. That is not a compliment. It is not meant as one. It is a fact. You are allowed to be angry about the letter. You are allowed to be tired. We just have to choose where the result lands. He drops the shield. Smoke lifts in a thin line. The air smells like singed cloth and the inside of a stove. A group of younger students gathers at a safe distance and watches with round eyes. No one is hurt. The prefect has already started a chant to clear the yard. He knows the drill. Hogwarts has a drill for everything now. Fleur does not move her hand from under his. Her fingers open a little. The line of her jaw loosens. The pull in the air drops back to a hum that he can think inside. Thank you, she says. The words scrape. We should tell Hermione what it felt like, he says. We should. I should tell you about the letter. You can. Or not. Your choice. Her eyes come to his at that. She studies him as if to find the trap. There is none. Later, she says. Not with everyone watching. All right. They cross the yard again when the crowd clears. A man in a dark coat stands in the shadow under the eaves of the greenhouses. He has pale hair that the light finds even when he stands where it cannot reach. He rests one finger on the head of a cane. The cane is silver and shaped like something that once had fangs. He does not approach. He taps the cane once on the stone and turns away. An owl lifts from a nearby post with a short beat of wings and slices toward the trees. A thin roll of parchment knocks against its leg. Hermione finds them outside the library doors with a sheaf of notes jammed under her arm. I saw the banner, she says. I need to know everything that you felt, both of you. Order of events. Pulse rate if you noticed. Any change in sound. I want the whole sequence. Fleur is very pale. She is steady again. She nods. I will tell you, she says. First I want water. They sit at a small table near the west window. Hermione writes as they talk. Fast and neat. Harry gives short answers. Fleur speaks in clean lines as if she has done this before. She has the habit of someone who has narrated events for officials. What did you feel? When did it start? What were you thinking right before? When she finishes, Hermione taps the quill against the margin and looks at the notes. The shield is the key, she says. The moment the shield went up, the fire softened instead of spread. Your hand made a difference too, but the shield was first. I think his core shaped the field and your magic followed the path. Then the touch did the rest. Fleur looks at Harry's hand where it sits on the table. She draws in a small breath and lets it out. Felt like a counted beat, she says, like a song that found the right measure. I do not want to say that. I have tried not to be a song for other people. But that is the truth. Harry nods. I am not going to use it to make you do anything, he says. I know. I would not sit here if I thought you wanted that. Hermione turns a page. There is a pattern in the old texts, she says. Veela magic responds to anchors when they are far from home. The word is not used, but the shape is there. I need to find the exact phrasing before I say it is proof. Fleur closes her eyes for a second. When she opens them, the mask she wears for crowds is back in place. I should go to my dormitory, she says. There will be questions. She stands. She hesitates. We will talk later, she says to Harry. When you want, he says. She leaves with that. The room feels different when she is not in it. Not calmer. Not louder. Just ordinary again. Hermione sets down the quill and rubs the bridge of her nose. There was a man near the greenhouses, she says. Pale hair. He was not one of ours. I saw him, Harry says. Do not follow him alone. I will not. She looks at him over the top of her notes. You said you would not fight a dragon without me, she says. He snorts. I did not say that, he says. You did in your eyes. He smiles small and real. Fine. No dragons without you. Good. Night folds over the castle. Snow begins at last. Not much. A steady sift that turns the grounds soft around the edges. The windows haze. The torches along the corridor burn with small halos. Harry likes the way the noise of the school drops when the first snow comes. Sounds like the whole place takes a breath. He walks alone in the long gallery behind the charms classroom, listening to the quiet tick of the suits of armor. He is not hiding. He is not hunting. He is letting his head settle. An owl brushes the glass on the far side of the corridor and then bounces to catch itself. It leaves a little mark on the pane like a thumbprint. Takes off again into the dark. Harry watches it go and then looks down when something taps the sill. A thin roll of parchment sits there, sealed with a drop of pale wax pressed with a crest that is not from Hogwarts. He does not touch it. He does not need to touch it to know it is not for him. He steps back. He looks up and down the hall. No one. He leaves the parchment where it is and walks away. Fleur sits alone 2 floors higher in a small reading room the Beauxbatons girls have claimed. The fire in the grate gives a steady light. She has a mug of hot water. She cannot taste it. Her hands are warm around the ceramic and her face is cold. A tap at the window makes her flinch. She opens it and lets the owl in. It drops the parchment into her hands and leaves without asking for food. She looks at the seal. It is a crest she knows from before she knew ink. She cracks it with her thumb and pulls the note free. The message is short. The letters are tight and even. A single line, written in a hand that does not ever shake. Soon it says, then another word. Proof. The room tilts. Not the room. Her blood. She breathes in through her nose and out through her mouth. She tastes ash that is not there. She folds the parchment and slides it under a book. The paper warms. For a second the crest reappears through the top page as if burned there by a coal. She pulls her hand back. The glow dies. The book is unmarked. She waits until her heart stops kicking. She stands. She walks to the window and sets her forehead to the cold pane. She watches the snow. She does not cry. A door opens behind her. A woman in pale blue steps inside without knocking. Older. Hair pinned in a clean knot. Face set in a way that asks for permission only from the person in her mind. Fleur does not turn. You could write a letter, Fleur says. The woman shuts the door. Letters can be intercepted, the woman says. I came to see you breathe. I am breathing. You are trembling. Fleur looks at her hands. She is. She tucks them under her sleeves. You brought the message, Fleur says. I carried the warning. I did not write it. Fleur looks at the book on the table with the folded note under it. They want proof, she says. They always want proof, the woman says. The world asks us to show our throats and call it peace. Fleur closes her eyes. What do you want me to do, she says. The woman steps closer. She is careful not to come so close that the air starts to change. She stops a pace away. I want you to keep your head, the woman says. I want you to choose on your feet. But the matriarch will not wait forever. The clan will not risk you without an anchor. Fleur turns then. Her face is clean of the look she wears for crowds. The fear is right there and the stubbornness with it. He is a boy, she says. The world is already on his back. I will not climb up there with a saddle. The woman lifts her chin. Then do not. Ask him to build a place beside him where you can stand. Ask him to choose to stand there too. Then write that word. Proof. Fleur laughs once, without humor. If only it were that simple. The woman looks toward the window. I saw the banner burn, she says. You held when he touched your hand. Fleur looks down. He did not take, she says. He did not assume. He asked. He said it was my choice. The woman nods once. Choices have weight, she says. Yes. They stand in the quiet. The grate clicks. Snow taps the glass. The school turns in its sleep. The woman moves to the door. Be careful who hears you say anchor, she says. There are ears that like to sell new words. I know. She leaves. The latch clicks. Fleur draws the note out again and reads the 2 words until they lose shape. She sets it back under the book. She rests her hands flat on the table to stop them shaking. She counts her breaths. In the Gryffindor common room, Harry sits with Hermione and Ron at a corner table. The place is loud and warm. Someone starts a song and stops after the first verse when they forget the words. A chess set size as a knight goes down. Hermione has drawn a little diagram of the courtyard on a scrap of parchment. There are lines and arrows and dots that mean heat and sound. We have to assume the attack was watched, she says. The timing is wrong otherwise. That man did not stand in that exact spot by accident. Ron sags in his chair. Why does it always have to be watched, he says. Why can we not have one fire without an audience? Because people like to collect things, Hermione says. Secrets. Edges. If they think Harry is a key, they will wait for the moment he fits a lock. Ron makes a face. Do not call him a key, he says. It makes me want to slam a door. Harry feels tired in his bones. Not the kind of tired sleep fixes. He still feels the warmth of Fleur's hand under his in the yard. The memory is not heavy. It is steady. He looks at Hermione. If the word anchor comes up in your reading, tell me fast, he says. Hermione goes still for a second. You heard that word, she says. Not in a book. She nods once. I will keep it quiet, she says. Ron looks between them like he has missed a step on a staircase in the dark. Am I supposed to know what we are talking about, he says. Not yet, Hermione says. That is not fair, Ron says. It is not about fair, Hermione says. It is about not making a mess with a word that might get her killed. Ron shuts his mouth. He stares into the fire and does not speak for a full minute. Up in the Beauxbatons reading room, Fleur folds her cloak and puts it away. She tucks the note into the seam of the book cover where the spine meets the board. No one will find it there unless they know to look. She picks up a quill. She sets it down again. She thinks of Harry in the courtyard saying, "Breathe with me." She thinks of the way the shield changed the shape of her anger. She thinks of the word proof and feels the skin on her arms pebble with cold that is not from the air. She does not sleep early. Back in the library, the shadow under the balcony returns. This time it is not a man with pale hair. It is a woman in a plain robe with the hood up. She stands still for a long time and watches the table where Hermione left her notes. She does not touch them. She only reads without moving her hands. Then she turns and vanishes down the side stairs. A small mark appears on the lower corner of the parchment Hermione drew. A speck. No bigger than a fly. It looks like nothing. It is not nothing. It carries the exact pattern of the arrows and lines to a different sheet of parchment in a different office where a different hand will pour it into a report that uses words like asset and control. The night settles. The snow thickens. The castle seems to lean closer to listen to itself. In a quiet room 3 floors down, a small crest burns for a second on a blank page and fades, leaving behind 2 words in a tiny neat hand. Soon the page says, "Proof." Fleur closes her eyes and lets a single tear break free. It tracks a clean line over her cheek. She wipes it with her knuckle, angry at the wet and at the world that wants timing to be a weapon. She straightens her shoulders. She stands. She goes to the window and watches the yard go white. Harry lies awake and feels the place in his chest where the fire tried to pool. Sits quiet now. He can feel that it is there if he look at it, the way you can feel a bruise you cannot yet see. He thinks of the way her voice dropped when she said family. He thinks of the man with the silver cane and the owl. He thinks of Hermione's arrows and of Ron trying to hold himself together with jokes that do not land. He tells himself he will go to sleep. He does not. The snow keeps falling. The castle keeps breathing. Somewhere in the dark, a bird sings once in its sleep and goes still. In the morning, someone will find a clean burn along the length of the courtyard flagpole that did not char the wood around it. In the same hour, an unsigned note will land on a polished desk in London, written in a careful hand that smells like expensive paper and old smoke. The note will say that the tether fits. The chapter ends on the quiet of the first full snow. The castle glows. Garlands hang from the stone. The floor shines like still water. Music warms the air. Students move in careful lines that break every time someone laughs. Harry stands near the doors and pulls at his cuff. His dress robes fit better than last year. That is a mercy. He watches people arrive in 2s and 3s. He tries to keep his head clear. Hermione appears at his side with a sharp look and a neater dress robe tug on his sleeve. "Stand up straight," she says, "and breathe. It helps." "I am breathing," Harry says. "Good." Keep doing it. Ron walks up and stops dead. His eyes are already on the far side of the hall. His mouth opens. Harry does not need to look to know what Ron sees. Fleur has entered with the Beauxbatons group. Blue dress. Clean lines. She carries herself like the floor will hold because she told it to. The air shifts. People turn without meaning to. The band stumbles for half a beat, then finds the tune again. Ron swallows. Mate, he says, voice thin. Look at her. I am, Harry says. You are not falling over, Ron says. How are you not falling over? Hermione nudges Ron's shoulder with the back of her hand. Eyes on your date, she says. And if you cannot manage that, eyes on anything else. Do not stare. I am not staring, Ron says while staring. Harry tries not to smile. He takes a breath and feels the pull slide past his scar and fade like mist. People around them sway toward Fleur and then remember where they are. A boy from Hufflepuff trips over nothing. A girl from Slytherin fans herself with a napkin and pretends she meant to do it. Fleur's eyes sweep the room once. They find Harry. She holds the look for a second that feels longer than it is. She walks toward him with an even step. Good evening, she says. Evening, Harry says. You look nice. Thank you, she says. You look like you wish you were in a library. I like the music, he says. That is not the same as an answer, she says. He lets out a breath. I am glad you are here. She tips her head. Not a smile. A small ease at the corner of her mouth. Will you dance? She says. One dance. Then we can leave the floor. Yes, Harry says. They step out. The pull around Fleur grows and settles. People shift to give them space. Harry puts his hand where it should go. He is careful with the distance. She sets her hand in his. Her fingers are cool. Tell me if you feel it, she says. I feel it, he says. Like a sound behind a wall. And now, she says. He focuses on the count. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. The pull falls off. He can hear the steps and the bow on the strings and the small scrape of shoes. He can hear her breath. It eases when you focus, she says. It eases when I look at you like a person, he says. Not like a story. Do you always say the quiet part out loud? She says. When it matters, he says. A swirl of students turns near them. Ron passes with a date who looks determined to enjoy herself no matter what he does. He glowers past her shoulder at Harry and Fleur. He says something Harry cannot hear. His date frowns at him. Ron says something else. His date shakes her head and walks away from him mid-turn. Ron stops dead and then storms off the floor. Fleur's eyes flick that way then return. He is angry, she says. He is confused, Harry says. He will say things he does not mean. Tonight he will mean them, she says. The dance ends. People clap. The next song starts at once. Harry steps back to let Fleur decide. She squeezes his hand once and leads him to the edge of the floor. They stop near a column. The music dulls. The noise thins. Thank you, Fleur says. For the dance. For the space. Do you want to sit? Harry says. I want to talk where the floor will not listen, she says. The balcony, Harry says. They slip through a side door. Cold air meets them. The sky is clear and sharp. The lake holds the moon like a coin. The noise from the hall comes through the stone as a soft thrum. Out here it is quiet enough to hear shoes on the flags. Fleur rests her hands on the rail and looks at the dark water. She draws one breath and lets it go. She watches it leave her mouth in the cold. I need to tell you something and I hate the words, she says. Say them anyway, Harry says. I am far from my family circle, she says. When I am away for long, my magic drifts. It listens to me too well. It spills when I am tired or afraid. My people use a word for someone who steadies that drift. Anchor. Harry says nothing. He waits. He can feel his heart start to drum in his throat. My clan sent me to look for one, she says. The elder women read for signs. They saw a soul with a mark of love that does not break. Yours. They did not know your name. They sent me because I am strong and they feared I would burn without help. She keeps her eyes on the lake. Her voice drops. If I stay away from the circle and do not bind to an anchor, the fire tips. Turns mad. It becomes the old form that protects but does not know when to stop. If that stays, the person inside fades. Harry swallows. You burn through yourself, he says. Yes, she says. I do not want that. I also do not want to turn you into a task. You did not trick me, Harry says. You told me. You could have stayed quiet. She turns to face him. I did try to stay quiet, she says. I thought if I willed it hard enough I could hold. Today proved I cannot do that forever. I told you because I want you to choose. If you choose no, I will go home now. I will not stand here and pretend you owe me. Before he can answer, the door opens. Ron stands there, flushed and loud. So this is what it is, Ron says. You pull him out here and whisper and he nods and the whole school bends around you. Ron, Harry says. Stop. No, Ron says. I can think fine right now. This is not funny. You are being played and you like it. You make speeches about choice and then you follow her out like a dog on a lead. Enough, Hermione says from behind Ron. She pushes the door wider with her shoulder and steps out. You are embarrassed because your date left. Do not make that into a theory. Ron ignores her. He points at Fleur. His finger shakes. What did you do to him? Ron says. Say it. What did you do? Fleur's voice stays level. I told him the truth, she says. I asked him to make a choice with his own mind. You made my mind into soup, Ron says. You do that to every boy in there. You cannot help it. You do not even need to try. Then be angry at the magic, Harry says. Not at her. Ron laughs once without humor. She has you talking like a book, he says. You cannot hear yourself. Ron, Hermione says. Your grammar is falling apart when you get loud. That is not helping your point. Do not, Ron says to her. Do not correct me like a teacher. I am not stupid. No one said you are, Hermione says. You are hurt. That is different. Ron looks from Hermione to Harry. He is shaking. He looks tired and young and stubborn. She will pick you apart, Ron says. She will get you killed. She will make you choose her over everything. Over us. Over what we are meant to do. Fleur looks past Ron into the hall as if weighing whether to walk through him or around him. She decides to do neither. She steps closer to Harry but leaves a small gap. I am not here to break him, she says. I am here because I cannot stay what I am if I do not find a way to hold. I told him so he can say yes or no. He has that right. Ron throws his hands. There is no right when the air shouts at him. This is a trick. All of it. Enough, Harry says louder. Stop talking about her like she is not in the room. If you want to be angry with me. I asked her to come out here. I wanted to hear her without the noise. Ron takes one step back. He scrubs his face with both hands. He shakes his head. I cannot watch you do this, he says. Not tonight. He turns and goes. Hermione looks at Harry and then at Fleur. I will make sure he gets back to the hall and sits down before he says anything to anyone else, she says. Then I will find you. Thank you, Fleur says. Hermione nods and leaves. The door shuts. The balcony is quiet again. The cold pulls at Harry's ears. He looks at Fleur. She meets his eyes. There is fear there. There is also resolve. I am sorry your friend is in pain, she says. He is not only angry with you, Harry says. He is angry with me because I did not fall apart when you walked in. He is angry with himself because he did. She shifts her weight. Do you have an answer for me? She says. If the answer is no, say it. I will go. I will not argue. Harry looks down at his hands. He chooses slow words. I do not like when a choice has a threat attached to it, he says. I hate it. I have lived inside too many of those. You told me the threat so I could see it and not pretend the room is a place it is not. That matters. He lifts his head. I care about what happens to you, he says. I do not know all that the word anchor means. I do know I will not run from you because the word is hard. I will learn the shape of it with you. I cannot promise more than that tonight. Fleur breathes out. Her eyes close for a second. When she opens them, they are steadier. That is an honest answer, she says. I can live inside honest. The air changes by a hair. Not pressure. Not pull. A presence, like someone who has always known how to enter a room without the room noticing. The hair on Harry's arms prickles. He turns. A woman stands in the shadow near the door. Pale hair pinned back. Blue silk deep enough to look like night. Her face holds calm the way a lake holds a reflection. She steps forward and the lantern light clears her features. Apollon Delacour, she says. Matriarch by proxy for this circle and this hour. Fleur goes still. Maman, she says, a whisper and a warning in one. She draws her shoulders square. You did not send for me. I sent for the moment, Apollon says. Her voice is low and even. It came. Harry straightens. He remembers to bow. It is not fancy. It is respectful. Harry Potter, he says. I know who you are, Apollon says. She looks at his face for a long second. Not the scar. His eyes. You chose not to hide. No, he says. Good, she says. Then we can speak plain. She shifts her look to Fleur. Something softens that only family would notice. It lasts one breath. Then it is gone. You told him, Apollon says. Yes, Fleur says. Then I will say what I came to say. Apollon says to Harry. The clan is not a court and not a church. We do not force with law and we do not bless with rights unless we must. We protect our own and we do not fling our daughters into the fire to prove a line in a book. We have a need. She has a need. You might answer it. That is not a romance. That is a fact. Harry holds her gaze. I understand, he says. Do you? Apollon says. Then hear the rest. We will not accept a boy who wants a prize and a story and a new word to wear on a badge. We will not accept a boy who thinks an anchor is a leash. We will not accept a boy who thinks he can fix a woman by standing in front of her and telling the world to behave. Harry says nothing. He lets the sentences land. Apollon nods, as if she has put weights on a scale and is watching the needle. You are not that boy, she says. At least not tonight. Fleur lets out a breath she did not know she was holding. She steps closer to Harry. She does not touch him. She stands near enough that Apollon can see the choice but not call it a show. What happens now? Harry says. Apollon turns her head toward the dark lawn and the faint lines of the hedges. Now you prove your use, she says. Not to our pride, to her life. We call these trials hearth and wing. They are old, and they are not about clever tricks. Tell me, Harry says. First, Apollon says. You stand in a room where her anger would spill, and you keep it from touching anyone without grabbing her by the throat. No barked orders. No look that says stop being yourself. You keep the heat inside a shape with your own steadiness. You do this while others speak to you as if you are wrong to try. Harry nods once. Second, Apollon says. You stand in front of a voice that is not hers and refuse it without turning your refusal into cruelty. This voice will be ours. We will ask you to come to us and we will do it with honey. You will say no with clean words. You will not break what you do not need to break. Harry nods again. Third, Apollon says. You show that you understand life is not yours to spend to make a point. You will be asked to win a contest that means nothing if the ground burns under your feet. You will choose the ground. You will let the contest go. You will explain why without hiding behind a slogan. Fleur watches Harry's face. She can see the way he sets each task in his head and turns it to see all sides. She watches his jaw tighten and then ease. When, Harry says. Soon, Apollon says. But not at midnight after a dance. I am not a monster. We will start when your headmaster names a neutral hour and place. He is cautious. He will insist. I do not mind. A door opens on the far side of the balcony. Dumbledore steps out with his usual light step and a glass at the edge of a smile. Good evening, he says. Madame Delacour. Miss Delacour. Harry. Headmaster, Apollon says. I believe I overheard my name spoken by the wind, Dumbledore says. It tends to repeat gossip. Apollon does not laugh. Dumbledore's smile dims by a shade. He bows his head a little. I will not pretend I did not mean to be here, Dumbledore says. I felt the air shift and thought it best to stand near a door. Then you will hear this, Apollon says. Your boy will take our trials. We will not harm him. We will not harm anyone. You will name a place where no one will turn this into a headline before it is done. Dumbledore's eyes move to Harry. Do you want this? He says. Harry looks at Fleur. She looks back. She does not plead. She does not push. She is steady and afraid and ready to do hard things without a promise of a soft end. Yes, Harry says. I want the chance to show I am not a story people write without asking me. Very well, Dumbledore says. Tomorrow at noon. The old amphitheater by the South Lawn. I will secure it. For witnesses only. Myself, Minerva, Madame Maxime, and your chosen elder, Madame Delacour. There will be no press. If anyone tries, they will find the grounds unhelpful. Agreed, Apollon says. Fleur breathes again. She steps nearer to Harry, then stops. She looks at her mother. Thank you, she says. This is not a gift, Apollon says. It is a door. She turns to Harry. One more thing, she says. When you speak to her as if this is not a test. Speak to her as if it is your life. Because it is. I know, Harry says. Apollon inclines her head. She steps back into the shadow and is gone as if the night took her. Dumbledore watches the doorway where she vanished. His eyes are bright and far away for a beat. Then he looks back at the two students in front of him. I am tempted to make a small speech, he says. I will not. I will only say that I expect truth tomorrow. No posturing. No grand gestures. They break more than they mend. Harry nods. Understood, he says. Dumbledore gives one crisp nod and leaves them to the cold and the quiet. Fleur moves to the rail again. She sets her hands there and looks at the lake. The wind lifts a strand of hair and lays it down again. I did not want you dragged into a test on a night with music, she says. I am already in, Harry says. Better to be honest and tired than quiet and tangled. That line sounds like Hermione, Fleur says. She would be pleased you noticed, Harry says. They stand without speaking for a while. The sounds from the hall rise and fall. Laughter spills and fades. A string catches and is tuned again. The night smells clean and cold. Fleur turns. I owe you something before tomorrow, she says. A name. You met my mother. The clan will say the word anchor like it is a tool. I will not. I will say it like a promise. If you decide this is not for you after the first trial, you can step away. I will not call you a coward. I will not turn your name into a knife in a room full of people. I will go home. I will find another way. It may hurt. I will still do it. Harry studies her face. I hear you, he says. And I am not planning to run. I know, she says. The door opens a crack and Hermione slips out again. She looks between them, checks the corners, then lets the door fall shut. Ron is back inside, she says. He is quiet and he is eating. I told him that was his job for the next hour. He said some things. I told him to save them until he could say them without spitting. He agreed. For now. Thank you, Harry says. Hermione nods. She looks at Fleur. Tomorrow, she says. I want to sit with Madame Maxime. I will not interfere. I will watch. Fleur tips her head. You can watch, she says. You will know if we lie. I will know if you lie badly, Hermione says. Do not try it. Fleur almost smiles. I am not good at lies, she says. I talk too direct. Yes, Hermione says. That is why I think I like you. Hermione squeezes Harry's arm once. Eat, she says. Then sleep. No library tonight. You need your head. She goes. The door closes. Fleur looks at Harry for a long beat. I am going back in, she says. If I stay here I will start thinking and then I will not stop until morning. Would you like to walk in with me? Harry says. Yes, she says. 1 minute. They do not touch. They walk side by side through the door and into the light. The music swells. People turn, then look away. Ron is at a table with his head down over a plate. He does not come over. He lifts one hand without looking. It is something. Harry and Fleur find a place near the wall where they can see people and people can see them without feeling like they must prove anything. They talk about small things for a little while because small things keep the ground steady. What the band is playing. How bad the pudding was last week. How Madame Pants can hear a whisper through a stone floor. When the hour grows late, they part with a simple nod. No grand scene. No eyes on them for a final bow. She walks toward the Beauxbatons girls. He walks toward the Gryffindor steps. Hermione appears like a shadow and falls in beside him. She does not speak until they reach the top. Tomorrow will be hard, she says. Good hard if we do it right. We will, Harry says. In a quiet room of blue silk, Apollon stands with her hands on the back of a chair. An older woman with silver at her temple sits by the fire, her eyes calm and sharp. He will do, the older woman says. He might, Apollon says. We will see. Do you pity him? The older woman says. No, Apollon says. I do not pity someone who sees a wall and still chooses to walk. I respect that. Pity is for people who have no choice. He has one. Fleur enters, pale but centered. She closes the door and looks at her mother. I told him I would accept no for an answer, she says. Good, Apollon says. Sleep. Tomorrow is not a theater. It is a measure. Fleur nods. She goes to her room. She sits on the edge of the bed and looks at her hands. She remembers the feel of Harry's hand in hers on the floor, steady on the count. She remembers the word choice. She lies down and closes her eyes. She forces her breath slow. She lets the day drain. In the Gryffindor dormitory, Ron pulls the curtains of his bed and stares at the top of the canopy. He is not crying. His chest hurts like he ran up the tower steps 5 times. He hates that it hurts. He hates that he said the wrong things. He hates that he meant some of them. I am still here, he says into the dark. I am not going anywhere. Across the room, Harry lies awake and watches the shape of the window turn from black to dark gray. He thinks of the trials. He thinks of anger in a room. He thinks of saying no without turning proud. He thinks of what it means to pick the ground instead of the contest. He does not try to be clever. He plans to show up and listen and hold steady. He plans to tell the truth. When sleep takes him at last, it is quick and clean. Morning will bring a circle marked on the grass, 4 chairs, and the first task. The day will decide whether the word anchor turns from a problem into a promise. Wind presses the grass flat in the old amphitheater. Noon light, for chairs on the low stone. Wards hum under the skin like a faint itch. Dumbledore finishes a slow circle with his wand and sets the tip to the turf. The hum settles into a steady note. No press, he says. No visitors. No tricks. Professor McGonagall stands with a ledger, lips thin, eyes watchful. Madame Maxime folds her arms and looks at the far hedge as if it might decide to complain. Apollon Delacour waits near the first step with her hands easy at her sides. Fleur stands behind her mother, pale, centered. Harry steps into the circle. The sound of his shoes on stone clicks once, twice. He feels the hum run up through his ankles. The air smells like clean grass and ward smoke. Ready? Apollon says. Yes, Harry says. Fleur looks at him. There is strain at the corner of her mouth. She nods once. Apollon lifts her hand. A thin thread of light forms in the air. It floats between Harry and Fleur, steady and still. This is not a leash, Apollon says. It is a bridge. You will feel more of what she feels. She will feel less of what you feel. That is the nature of it. If you cannot bear that, say it now. I can bear it, Harry says. Fleur sets her palms open. I consent, she says. No one else can speak that for me. Apollon nods. The thread sinks into their chests with a soft pop. The sound is small and final. Harry feels heat at his breastbone, quick and light, then a run of cold that feels like a door opening onto winter. It does not hurt. It just happens. His breath shortens, then finds a count again. First trial, Apollon says. Hearth. You keep heat inside a shape. No barked orders. No grab. No proud show. You listen and you answer with steadiness. The wind gusts. It drops. The sky seems closer for a moment. Harry smells smoke that is not there yet. Fleur draws a breath, long and thin. Her eyes lose focus. Her hands want to clench. She does not let them. Harry feels the first push of panic that is not his. comes like a wave under the ribs. He plants his feet. Breathe with me, he says low. She hears him. He watches her throat work. Her breath catches. The smell of hot stone creeps across the air. A banner at the edge of the circle creaks on its pole. There is no fire yet, only the weight of it. Count, he says. For in, for out. She nods. She tries. A flicker of white light races along the thread and stings his sternum. He winces. He stays. I receive a letter, Fleur says. The words come thin. It says soon. It says proof. The edge of the grass gilds, one blade at a time, as if a match passed close. The wards hold. The hum deepens. Here, Harry says, voice steady. He holds up his hands where she can see them. Look at my hands. Name them. How many fingers? 5, she says. She is shaking. 5. What color are my cuffs? He says. Black, she says. What is your name? He says. Fleur, she says. The tremor in her voice eases by a hair. My name is Fleur. The light at the edges pulls back. The smell of heat fades. Sweat beads along her hairline. Harry feels it on his own skin a beat later, as if his body is trying to catch up to hers. Pauline does not speak. She watches. McGonagall writes a line, then stops writing and looks without moving. The panic comes again, sharper. A shriek of air, then a tight band around the chest. Harry feels his throat narrow. He hears the phantom crack of a banner pole. He sets his feet wider. Say the word home, he says. Say it twice. Home, Fleur says. Home. The heat drops. It does not vanish. It lies still as if waiting for a next order. Harry keeps his eyes on her face. I am here, he says. You are not alone in this room. She nods. The tremor leaves her hands. The white thread dims to a low glow. Pauline lifts 2 fingers. The hum changes key. A soft sigh runs through the amphitheater, as if the circle let out the breath it had kept for the last minute. Held, Pauline says. No bark. No pride. First trial stands. Fleur wipes the sweat at her temple with the back of her wrist. Her mouth tries to find a smile and does not. She nods to Harry. Thank you, she says. The words scrape. Water, Maxime says, already moving. She hands Fleur a flask. Fleur drinks. She passes it to Harry. He drinks and feels his tongue remember itself. Pauline lets the thread rest. Stays quiet and warm. Second trial, she says. Wing. You hear a voice that is not hers. You refuse without cruelty. You do not turn no into a performance. She turns. When she speaks again, her voice is different. Warmer. Sweet at the edges. Every syllable invites. Harry, Pauline says. Come with us. We will teach you what we know. We will keep her safe. We will wrap you in quiet. You have carried a war in your mouth since you were a child. Come to a place where you can set it down. The sound pours like honey onto stone. It wants to cover edges. It wants to make words like anchor and duty feel like pillows. Harry feels the urge to nod. He does not nod. He lets the thought pass and fall. He looks at Fleur. I will not leave Hogwarts to hide inside a promise, he says, clean and plain. I will work with you when it protects her. I will not vanish into your house and become a symbol you can show at parties. Pauline's eyes do not change. The voice warms again. You would have worship, she says. You would have quiet. You would have better bread. Harry almost laughs. The urge is real and odd. He breathes it away. No, he says. Thank you. I will refuse. I will visit for dinner. I will leave when we finish the soup. McGonagall coughs into her hand. It might be a laugh. It might not. Pauline lets the warmer tone go. She is herself again. Refused, she says. Cleanly. No insult. Second trial stands. Dumbledore shifts his weight. We take a short break, he says, mild. 5 minutes. Breathe air that is not shared. Harry steps out of the circle and leans his shoulder against the low wall. His hands shake now that he can let them. He likes the feel of the stone under his palm. It is cool. It does not ask anything. Dumbledore moves to stand beside him without fanfare. Your mind is loud when you try not to think, Dumbledore says, voice quiet. You press in with force and force pushes back. I know, Harry says. You will need sharper quiet soon, Dumbledore says. There is a man who thinks in angles. He will see this bond and decide it is a machine he can use. He does not love. He does not lust. He controls. Death is a tool, not an answer. Voldemort, Harry says. Yes, Dumbledore says. He will not try to kill you to end this. He will try to bind you to her and drain what you make together. If he cannot bind, he will break and he will try to catch what falls. We must make sure there is nothing he can catch. How? Harry says. You learn to close the door, Dumbledore says. You learn to make your mind a room with no windows when it needs to be. You learn to feel a hand at the latch and do nothing, because doing nothing is sometimes the best wall. Occlumency. I should have pressed it earlier. I did not. I am pressing it now. Harry nods. His stomach is tight. When? He says. Tonight, Dumbledore says. Minerva will start you. I will continue. You will not like the first week. That is fine. Harry looks back at the circle. Fleur stands with her hands wrapped around the flask. She watches the grass bend in the wind. She sees him looking. She lifts the flask in a small salute and then lowers it. The corner of her mouth eases by a breath. Thank you, Harry says. For what? Dumbledore says. For saying it plain, Harry says. Dumbledore smiles a little. It is a rare pleasure when a student asks me to be less clever, he says. They step back into the circle. Apollon looks at Harry and then at the sky. Third trial, she says. Ground. You choose life over contest. You will be asked to catch a feather that burns in the air. If you chase it and the ground burns, you fail. If you let the feather go and keep the ground safe, you pass, provided you can tell us why. There is no trick. There is a choice. She opens her palm. A small white feather floats up, catches light and then glows, then burns. It does not turn to ash. It hangs in a slow drift, a bright ember in a soft wind. The air around it warms. Sparks snap like little knuckles. The grass under it browns in a small ring. Harry watches it rise and fall. He watches how the wind pushes it and how the heat rises from it. He watches the ring widen at the base by a finger width. Protego, he says. He does not throw the shield at the feather. He cups it over the grass. The heat hits the curve of the shield and slides. The browning stops. The feather floats over clear green. He does not move to catch it. He looks at Fleur. You hold a small shield over the feather, he says. I will hold the ground. She lifts her hand, palm up. A thin disk of heat settles over the feather like a lid. The feather burns under it, bright and pretty, with no smoke. The air steadies. Harry looks at Apollon. Contest means nothing if we hurt the place we stand, he says. I will always pick the place. You can keep your feather. Apollon closes her fingers. The feather blinks out. The smell of warm air remains. Third trial stands, she says. You chose the ground. McGonagall makes a neat mark. Maxime relaxes her arms. Dumbledore looks at the wards and then at the hedges as if to say, stay asleep. Apollon steps forward. She does not smile. She does not frown. She carries simple gravity into the next words. These trials are not a marriage, she says. They measure fitness for a task. The task is to keep her a person when the world shouts. On this measure, you pass. Fleur's breath leaves her in a sound that is not a sob and not a laugh. She looks at Harry. Her eyes shine. She blinks the shine back. There is one thing left, Apollon says. Not a task. A history. He must hear it. Fleur nods. I will tell him, she says. Apollon turns to Dumbledore. Your hour is kept, she says. Thank you. Dumbledore inclines his head. My pleasure, he says quiet. Apollon steps back to the edge of the circle and waits. Fleur faces Harry. She sets the flask down. She uncloses and closes her hands once, as if feeling for words. An ancestor of mine left the circle, she says. She found someone who looked like an anchor. He liked the story more than he liked the work. When she needed steadiness, he gave her poems and ran when the fire woke. She burned a market to the ground by accident. Not because she wanted to, because the world shook her and she had no hand to hold. The ministry wrote law after. They used that day to write more. They wrote words that hurt my people for years. She breathes. I tell you because the fear is not only mine. It is theirs too. When my mother looks at you, she sees a door. She also sees a market. Harry hears the crowd that is not here. He sees a street he has never walked. He hears the way a story about one day can live for decades. I hear you, he says. I will not be the boy who runs. I will be the boy who says, I am here. Fleur steps closer. Say it the way you said it to me in the tower, she says. Her voice is low. Say it the way you mean it. Harry looks at her, then at Apollon, then at the two teachers who watched him grow from a small boy into a taller one who kept standing because he does not know how to lie down during storms. The bond may push us into the same room, he says steady. It does not make the choice. You chose to tell me the truth. That is why I choose you freely. Silence. Wind. The simple beat of a heart in the throat. Fleur does not cry. Her eyes go bright and then clear. She gives a small nod, as if to say she will remember that exact sentence when it is quiet and when it is not. Apollon draws a breath that sounds like release. Then this circle closes, she says. She lifts a hand. The white thread draws out of their chests and curls into her palm. It vanishes with a soft click. The wards change note again. The itch under the skin fades. The air smells like cut grass. Provisional acceptance, Apollon says. Anchor by choice and by deed. We will not drag you into our house. We will not leave her alone in yours. Dumbledore steps forward. Minerva, he says. The room near the east stair. The one with the very bad painting that insists it is a portrait of a famous musician but is not. Already prepared, McGonagall says. Her mouth twitches for a second. He will not like the chair. No one likes the chair, Dumbledore says. That is why the chair works. He turns to Harry. Tonight, he says. After dinner. Bring no one. Tell no one. You will learn to close a door. Harry nods. He feels the tired hit at last. Hands heavy. Knees light. He breathes through it. Maxime touches Fleur's elbow. Walk with me, she says. We will speak to your mother without an audience. Fleur looks at Harry. Later, she says quiet. When you want, he says. They go. Apollon follows at a polite distance. McGonagall gathers her ledger and nods once at Harry, eyes soft and severe at the same time. Dumbledore lingers. You did not posture, he says. That will save lives. Harry sits on the low wall because his legs decide to ignore him for a second. He rubs his face with both hands and feels salt and dust and clean air. I am very tired, he says. Good, Dumbledore says. Tired means you did not lie to yourself. A rustle comes from the hedge on the south side. The sound is light and quick. Not a student. Not a teacher. Dumbledore's gaze flicks that way. His wand is in his hand before the next breath. A small bird lifts from the hedge and wheels twice. A thin bit of parchment drops from its leg and lands outside the wards with a soft tick. The bird is gone in an instant. Dumbledore walks to the line, bends and does not reach. The wards buzz. He looks at Harry. Do not touch it, he says. I was not going to, Harry says. Dumbledore uses a charm to flip the parchment. Turns. The seal faces up. Pale wax. A small crest pressed into it. The same that sat on the letters Fleur had hidden. Dumbledore's face goes still. He flicks his wand. The parchment ignites and turns to cinder without smoke. The ash falls into a neat circle. Someone wants us to move faster, Dumbledore says. We will not. He looks at the hedge again. Nothing moves. Go eat, he says. Then sleep for an hour if you can. Occlumency at 8. Harry stands. His legs work again. He feels hollowed out in a good way, like a room cleared of broken chairs. The amphitheater looks ordinary. The hum is gone. Only grass and stone. He walks up the path. The wind is cooler under the trees. He can hear students at a distance, the buzz of 100 voices and the clatter of plates. He passes a window and sees his reflection for a second. He looks like himself, only more awake. On the lawn near the greenhouses, Fleur stands with Apollon and Madame Maxime. They speak low. Apollon touches Fleur's cheek with the back of her fingers. Fleur nods. She sees Harry and gives a small sign with her hand. A simple hello. He returns it. In the corridor outside the hall, Hermione waits with a folded parchment and a look that says she has held her questions for an entire hour and will now let them out one by one in neat order. How did it go? She says. I passed, Harry says. She exhales. Good, she says. Tell me the rules of the room. Later, he says. I need food. I need to sit. You need both, she says. She falls in beside him. Ron saved you a place. Ron sits at the table with 2 plates and 3 rolls and a look that tries for casual and misses. You did not die, Ron says. Not yet, Harry says. Good, Ron says. He pushes a plate toward Harry without meeting his eyes. Eat that. I did not lick it. Harry eats. His hands stop shaking after the first few bites. The clatter and heat of the hall feel like a blanket that remembers his shape. Hermione waits until he finishes and then asks for the sequence. Harry gives it to her, simple and in order. She writes 2 words. Hearth, wing, ground. She circles each and writes 1 clean sentence beside them. He reads the sentences and nods. A clemency tonight, Hermione says. I know, he says. I will walk you to the door, she says. Then I will walk away and not try to help. Thank you, he says. Fleur enters with the Beauxbatons girls. The hall shifts and holds. She looks over once. Their eyes meet. She touches 2 fingers to her wrist where the thread had sunk and then lifts those fingers toward him. A small private sign that says, I felt it too. He nods. The simple sign sits warm under his ribs. When the light turns evening and the torches pick up the slack from the windows, Harry stands outside the east stair. The bad painting of the musician glares down and opens its mouth to start a speech about technique. McGonagall taps the frame. The voice stops. Inside, she says. Sit. Breathe. The room is bare. 1 chair in the center. A small table. No clock. No window you can open. The air is cool. Smells like chalk and old paper. Harry sits. The chair is not comfortable. It makes his back straight. It does not let him sink. Dumbledore shuts the door. He unrolls a strip of gray cloth and sets it on the table. You will fail the first time, he says. Possibly 7 times. That is fine. The only rule is that you do not lie when you feel the hand at the door. Harry nods. He places his palms on his thighs. He slows his breath. We begin, Dumbledore says. A soft pressure touches the edge of his mind. Not a punch. A knock. A suggestion. He feels the urge to run to the door and shout at the visitor to go away. He does not move. He lets the knock land and fade. He places a picture in his head of a room with plain walls and a table and a cup of water that never spills. The pressure rises, then changes as if testing the latch. Sweat slides down his spine. His jaw tightens. He keeps the room in his head plane. He does not add curtains. He does not add locks. He does not add anything at all. The pressure falls away. He opens his eyes. He did not realize he had closed them. Dumbledore looks tired and pleased. Again, he says. Harry breathes. He sets the room in place. He lets the next knock come and go. Down the corridor, the knight sits with quiet patience. Outside, the grass of the amphitheater cools and the ward smoke sinks and vanishes. In a pale office far from the school, a hand with careful nails writes a single line on a clean page. The line says that the trials stand. The same hand adds a second line that says the bond appears stable. A small crest seals the report. The wax cools. Back in the small room, Harry holds the plain room in his head until his vision swims. The chair digs into his back. His hands tingle. He is very tired. Enough for tonight, Dumbledore says at last. You held longer than most on a first attempt. Harry stands too fast and sits again until the room stops swaying. He laughs once, small. I am fine, he says. You are honest and tired, Dumbledore says. That is fine. Harry leaves the room and steps into the cooler corridor. Hermione waits on the bench with a closed book in her lap. She stands when she sees him. She does not ask anything. She walks him to the stairs. At the bottom of the tower, Fleur stands alone by a window. She looks at the dark lawn. She turns when Harry's steps slow. How was your wall? She says. Ugly, he says. Useful. Good, she says. They stand a breath apart. The corridor is empty. The school has gone to sleep in parts. The torches crackle. The stone holds the day's warmth. I am still choosing you, he says. She swallows once. I am still telling you the truth, she says. They part on that, simple and clean. He climbs the last stairs with heavy legs. He falls into bed and the sleep hits hard. Outside, under the hedge by the amphitheater, a small thing with a human hand and a patient plan picks a crumb of ash from the ward line and slides it into a pouch. It looks up at the windows. It grins without joy. Then it is gone. The castle breathes. The grass cools. The circle waits without a hum. The day ends on a quiet exhale. Morning breaks with noise. Owls hammer the rafters. The Gryffindor table is a mess of feathers and spilled tea. A dozen copies of the Daily Prophet slap down at once. Hermione catches one on the rebound. Her face tightens before she even reads. Ron reaches across the eggs and pulls a copy free. Harry does not reach. He waits. Hermione spreads the paper flat. The headline crawls across the top in fat letters. Boy who lived enchanted by part human. The moving photo shows Harry and Fleur on the Yule Ball floor. The angle makes it look like he is leaning in too close. The caption blinks. Is it love or a creature snare? Ron swears under his breath. He flips pages. The article is long. Drips. Hermione reads fast, jaw tight. They call you a public hazard, she says. They quote a senior ministry aide. No name. They misuse the word consent 5 times. They say Veela magic removes it from the room. Harry keeps his voice level. Is there anything true in it, he says. One thing, Hermione says. They saw you leave the hall with Fleur. Everything else is spin. Ron scrubs both hands over his face. His ears are red. This is going to spread, he says. People will say they always knew it. People like Malfoy will sing. Harry looks at the moving photo. He remembers the count of the steps. He remembers Fleur saying, 1 dance, then leave the floor. The memory sits clean and calm. The paper tries to stain it and fails. Hermione shuts the paper. We do not fight this with anger, she says. We fight it with records. I am going to the archives after lunch. Ron looks up, confused. Our archives, he says. No, Hermione says. The ministry. Public records. I want the full text of the guidelines for the treatment of non-wizard part humans. I want the Bills Committee minutes from the last revision year. I want any proposed act that mentions creature cohabitation or magical contracts. Ron blinks. How are you going to get those, he says. By asking for them, Hermione says. They are meant to be public. If they try to block me, that is a story of its own. Harry nods. I will come if you want, he says. No, Hermione says. You eat, go to class, and try to be boring for 6 hours. If they see you in the lobby, they will use it. I will take notes and bring them back. Ron looks like he wants to argue. He does not. Fine, Ron says. I will keep him boring. He tries a grin. It does not land. The hall buzzes with whisper and stare. Harry keeps his eyes on his plate and does not rush. He hears a Slytherin boy say the word leash. He hears a Hufflepuff girl say that the photo looks staged. He hears 2 third-years practice the word allure like it is a new spell. He finishes breakfast and stands. As they cross the hall, a witch in a plum hat plants herself in Harry's path. She has a notebook and a fast smile. Quick word, she says. How does it feel to be under a creature charm? Harry stops. Hermione moves in like a shield. Ron steps to the side. Ready. He is not under anything, Hermione says. He is a person with a right to walk to class. The witch keeps the smile. The quill keeps scratching. She tips the notebook to show the blank line where she wants a quote. Harry looks at the line. He can hear Dumbledore in his head saying, do not perform. He keeps his voice plain. It feels like waking up early and choosing to keep the promise you made the night before, he says. That is all. Please let me pass. The witch blinks, thrown by the lack of drama. She steps aside. Her quill moves anyway. Harry walks on. By midday, every corridor has a copy of the paper folded over a rail or jammed into a bin. By mid-afternoon, The whispers have settled into a low, constant hum. At the end of lunch, Hermione appears at the end of the table with ink on her fingers and a stack of notes. She does not sit. I found it, she says. And I found something worse. Harry and Ron stand at once. Hermione lowers her voice. The old guidelines are bad, she says. They give the ministry cover to inspect and register almost anyone they decide is other. But there is a draft act in a side file that is worse. It is called the Creature Cohabitation Act. It would let the ministry challenge any magical bond that involves a being and a human. It would let them call it coercion by default. It would let them force separation if a board of appointees ruled that the bond is not valid. The draft uses the word safety. It does not define it. Ron grimaces. Define valid, he says. They do not, Hermione says. That is the point. They are leaving room to decide based on politics. Harry feels his jaw tighten. How far along, he says. It is not on the floor, Hermione says. It has a note at the bottom. Accelerate. It is signed with initials. I could not match them to a name yet. She looks at Harry with a clear, sharp gaze. We have to treat this like war by paper, she says. We need allies with jobs and titles. We need a legal argument built on existing law, not a new one. We need proof that the bond is a contract between equals. We need to show that Fleur is choosing, not pushing you. We have to do it quickly. Ron shifts, restless. And if we go in there and they do not listen, he says. We make a record, Hermione says. We show our work. Judges change. Records last. A school owl drops onto the table with a small official envelope and a wax seal. It lands in front of Harry like a dare. Hermione breaks the seal. She reads. Her mouth goes thin. They want you at a ministry office this evening for an informal hearing, she says. It is not a court. It is a meeting that is not a meeting. Says, bring any counsel you wish. It also says, your presence is highly encouraged. The phrase highly encouraged is underlined in a way that wants to be a threat. Ron glowers. We do not have a solicitor, he says. We do not need one to talk at a table, Hermione says. I will do it. They will hate that I am 16 and they will call me a student. I will still do it. Dumbledore should be present. Madame Maxime as Fleur's head. Pauline if she will come. This is a room full of rules. We bring adults who understand walls. Harry breathes in slow. He thinks of the amphitheater. He thinks of the moment the white thread clicked into place. He thinks of the 3 trials and the choice to pick the ground over the feather. He hears his own voice saying, I choose you freely. He nods. Tell them yes, he says. We will be there. They spend the afternoon in classes because pretending the world is normal can be a kind of shield. In Transfiguration, McGonagall gives Harry one extra look and then docks a point from a boy who tries to whisper about the paper. In Defense, the practice target flares bright and then dims under the steady beat of spells. Harry keeps his hands moving. He breathes. Before dinner, Dumbledore calls them to his office. The silver instruments tick. The Phoenix watches them from its perch with one eye half closed. Dumbledore folds his hands. An informal hearing, he says. Always an interesting phrase. It means a person with a pen wants to pretend a decision has not already been made. Hermione lays her notes on his desk. They are drafting a new act, she says. Targets bonds like this. They want the right to force a separation if a board says so. Dumbledore reads the first page. He nods once. We will attend, he says. I will say little. I will insist on a transcript. I will ask for the names of those present. Madame Maxime has already said she will join. I sent a message to Madame Delacour and received a one-word reply. Coming. Harry lets out a breath he did not know he was holding. What about Fleur, he says. She will come, Dumbledore says. It is her life too. Do not speak for her. Stand with her. He looks at Harry over the rim of his spectacles. The trick tonight is to make clean sentences and to refuse traps, Dumbledore says. They will try to bait you into anger. They will try to make you take a proud pose. Do not. Harry nods. Hermione meets his eye. We hold ground, she says. Not feathers. They step into the flue at 7. The ministry atrium is cold and bright. The fountain no longer shows the old carvings. But the room still feels like judgment. A witch with a clipboard meets them with a maid's smile. This way, she says. It will be quick if you cooperate. Hermione's mouth twitches, but she does not speak. They follow down a corridor to a room with 2 white walls and a table that looks like it was made to hold a row of neat hands. 4 officials sit on the far side. One looks like a standard clerk. One looks like a lawyer. One is the kind of person who sits in rooms to make other people behave. The last wears a pink cardigan and a sweet expression that never reaches her eyes. Harry feels a sour twist in his stomach. The cardigan is new, the tone is not. It is the look of a person who thinks rules are a way to hurt neatly. Madame Maxime and Apollon are already seated. Fleur sits between them, spine straight. Her hands are calm on the table. She looks at Harry and the calm steadies. Dumbledore takes a chair at Harry's side. Hermione sits to his left with her stack of notes. Ron sits behind them, 1 row back, fists pressed to his knees so he will not thump anything. The woman in pink smiles at Harry. Thank you for coming, she says. I am Undersecretary Barrow. We wanted to clear up a few matters before an unfortunate story grows legs it does not deserve. We are all friends here. Hermione writes the time at the top of a page. Undersecretary Barrow watches and keeps the smile. Let us begin, Barrow says. Miss Delacour, are you enchanting Mr. Potter? No, Fleur says. Barrow tilts her head. You are a Veela, Barrow says. You have an aura. You cannot help it. I have read that it renders men incapable of sound judgment. I have read that your office has a duty to use correct terms. Hermione says, clean and level. Veela allure is a befuddlement effect that tends to be strongest when the subject chooses to watch movement or listen to voice. In the presence of intent, it can be resisted. Harry has resisted stronger compulsions than that for years. The records of his resistance to the Imperius Curse are public. Barrow's smile dents at the edge. She turns to Harry. Tell me, she says, are you in love? Harry hears the trap. If he says yes, they will call it obsession. If he says no, they will call him confused. He keeps it plain. I am choosing her, he says. She is choosing me. Each day we choose again. That is not a legal standard, the clerk says. We are not in a court, Hermione says. You invited a conversation. He is giving you the truth. If you want a standard, I brought one. She slides a sheet across the table. Contract law on magical partnerships, precedent list. Look at page 2, third case. 2 adults bound by magic are treated as capable of consent unless a specific compulsion is proven. You do not get to assume coercion because you do not like how the room feels when a Veela walks through it. The lawyer frowns at the page. The clerk looks annoyed at having to read. Barrow keeps the smile. Let us talk safety, Barrow says. Miss Delacour, you had a fire incident in the courtyard yesterday. Fleur meets the question head on. Yes, she says. I received a letter that caused distress. I lost control for a moment. Harry grounded me with a shield and with his presence. No one was hurt. We reported it to the headmaster. Barrow leans forward. Do you often lose control, she says. Not often, Fleur says. More often when I am far from my family. That is why I am here to speak of anchors. My clan teaches us to seek help when we need it. That is what I did. Apollon's voice enters the space like a measured weight. You are framing weakness as danger, Apollon says. Weakness is a human fact. Danger is what comes when people decide to make use of it. My daughter asked for the correct help. Your paper turned that into a headline. That is your danger, not hers. Barrow smiles without showing teeth. The ministry is responsible for all citizens, she says. If a magical bond is unsafe, we must act. A proposed creature cohabitation act would allow us to review and, if needed, separate parties for the good of both. Hermione sits forward. What is the legal basis for forced separation, she says. What is the required burden of proof? Which board would rule? Who appoints them? How do you ensure that it is not a political punishment for a union you personally dislike? Barrow opens her hands in a gesture that pretends to be patient. We are only discussing ideas, she says. Then you can answer, Hermione says. Ideas without details are how harm walks in the door. The lawyer clears his throat. Undersecretary, he says quietly. Barrow glances at him, then at Dumbledore. Headmaster, she says, perhaps you can help frame this. You are responsible for the safety of this school. Do you approve of a student entering a magical bond with a being? Dumbledore's eyes are very blue and very tired. I am responsible for truth here, he says. The truth is simple. Two students have formed a bond based on need and choice. We have tested its stability. It holds. I will not let this office paint the girl as a hazard so that a committee can practice control on a famous boy. If you want my position in a sentence you can cut out and paste in a report, here it is. The bond is not only safe, it has already saved lives. Barrow's smile slips a fraction. You cannot know that, she says. I do know it, Dumbledore says, because I was there when a spell that could have killed 3 children was redirected by the very steadiness you are trying to outlaw. You will not publish that because it sounds like approval, but you will remember it when you look in a mirror. Silence holds for a beat. The clerk coughs. The room is too warm. Barrow turns to Ron as if she wants an easier mark. Mr. Weasley, she says, you grew up with Mr. Potter. Does he seem himself? Ron stiffens. He glances at Harry, then at Fleur. He swallows. His voice is rough. He is stubborn and he hates being told what to do. Ron says. He is still both. He did not get quieter around her. He got clearer. If you want me to say I am jealous, I am. If you want me to say he is stupid, he is not. Barrow's eyebrows climb, amused for a second, then flatten. Thank you, she says. You may go. Ron sits back like his legs forgot how to stand. Hermione squeezes his sleeve once under the table. He does not look at her. He stares at the far wall and breathes. Barrow clasps her hands. One last point, she says. Miss Delacour, are you prepared to register as a being who cohabits with a human wizard? Such a registration allows for routine inspections to ensure public safety. Apollin's voice drops a degree. Define inspection, Apollin says. A simple home visit, Barrow says, bright. A check of wards. A review of daily routines. Perhaps a small charm to allow the office to verify your location during times of high alert. Fleur's fingers tighten on the edge of the table. No, she says. Barrow tilts her head. No, she repeats. I will not be collared with a charm that tells an office where I sleep. You have no right to cross my threshold and pretend it is kindness. Hermione's quill scratches. She writes the exchange word for word. She underlines the phrase location charm twice. Barrow sees the underlines and tries to recover the smile. We are only brainstorming, she says. Then you can write this down in your brainstorm, Hermione says. The ministry will meet its court challenge with empty hands if it tries to mark a being like property. The hearing ends when it runs out of ways to pretend it is kind. Barrow thanks them for their time and tells them they have been heard. The clerk refuses to hand over a transcript. Dumbledore asks for the names of the 4 present. He receives 2 first names and a title. He writes them anyway. In the corridor, Harry exhales a breath that feels like it had edges. Hermione tucks her notes into her bag. We have their shape now, she says. They want to register and track. They want a board with soft words and hard rules. They want the right to cut the thread and call it a rescue. Apollin smooths Fleur's sleeve. We will not let them, Apollin says. Fleur looks up at Harry. Are you all right, she says. Yes, he says. Are you? No, she says. Yes. I am angry. I can handle angry. Madame Maxime sets a hand to Fleur's shoulder. Back to school, Maxime says. Eat, sleep, study. Keep your feet on the floor, they cannot move. Back in the Great Hall, dinner is a churn of talk. Some people stare. Some look down and eat faster. A Ravenclaw girl stops at their table and says, For what it is worth, my aunt is part Veela and she is a better teacher than anyone in this room. Then she walks away, red-faced and brave. Ron pushes Stu around with a spoon and says nothing. Hermione eats quickly and then leaves to write. Harry eats until the shaking in his hands fades. Later, in the common room, the noise is thick. Seamus holds up the prophet and starts to make a joke, sees Harry's face, and puts it down again without speaking. Neville comes by and sets a chocolate frog on the table and does not ask why. Ron finally speaks. I said some wrong things on the balcony, he says low. I was angry and it came out crooked. I am still angry. But I am not going to stand on the wrong side of you while strangers try to cut your life up for parts. Harry nods once. Thank you, he says. Ron nods back. The two of them go quiet in a way that feels like breathing again. Hermione returns close to curfew with ink on her wrist and a set jaw. I wrote 3 letters, she says. 1 to the editor, 1 to a friendly reporter at the Quibbler, 1 to a solicitor my parents know who does rights work. I described the hearing and logged names. I left out strategy. If the ministry pretends tonight did not happen, there will still be a record. Harry looks at her. Thank you, he says. She shrugs, small. I am not doing you a favor, she says. I am doing my job. Near midnight, a new edition of The Prophet arrives with a short follow-up. Ministry holds informal safety talk with Hogwarts student. A bland paragraph. A photo of a door. No names. No quotes. No mention of registration or tracking. No mention of a location charm. Hermione taps the headline with one finger. They are pretending nothing happened, she says. That means we hit a nerve. Harry goes to bed with tired legs and a head that will not switch off. He thinks of Barrow's smile. He thinks of the way Fleur's voice did not shake when she said no. He thinks of the word collar and feels sick. He gets up and walks the corridor once. Quiet. On the 3rd floor landing, he stops. Fleur stands at the window with her cloak over her shoulders. The snow has started again. It makes the grounds look clean, which is a lie. The night is not clean. It is just quiet. She does not turn. She knows it is him. Will they keep pushing, she says. Yes, he says. She nods. I hate the word register, she says. It feels like being weighed and measured and told what I am worth. He stands beside her, not touching. They cannot measure what we cast together, he says. They cannot count it. They can try to name it, but they will get it wrong. She looks at his face. It is raw and honest. Then we will force them to look where the truth lives, she says. We will. She shifts her weight and leans her shoulder to the cold stone for a second. She pulls back. I should sleep, she says. You should, he says. She looks like she wants to say more. She does not. She nods and goes, light on the steps. The next morning brings a new turn of the knife. A second paper runs a column by a pure blood columnist who uses the word pollute. The language is polished and ugly. It makes blood and law sound like math. The headline uses the word protect. Hermione closes the paper and sets it in the bin. We do not dignify that with a response, she says. We build proof. We move first. After classes, she takes Harry and Fleur to the library with a stack of parchment and a list. We need a record of your bond that shows clear choice, she says. A witness statement from Dumbledore. One from Madame Maxime. One from Apollon. A short account from you two written in plain language that describes the trials and the terms. We attach it to a petition to recognize the bond as a magical contract with rights. We file it in the Wisingamot clerk office, public record. We force the ministry to argue in the open if they want to break it. Fleur sits very straight. We can do that, she says. We can, Harry says. They write until their fingers ache. Hermione edits without mercy. She cuts every word that looks like a pose. She makes them replace feeling with fact, and then adds one clean sentence to name the feeling after the fact stands. Dumbledore signs with a neat hand and a quiet smile that does not reach his eyes. Maxime signs with a firm stroke. Apollon signs with a name that looks like it could cut paper. Hermione adds a final page. It is a list of sources. It cites the case she waived in the hearing. It includes the exact title of the old guidelines. It names the year and the committee and the chair. It ends with one sentence. The ministry has a duty to defend free choice between equal beings. It cannot invent a danger to excuse the theft of rights. They deliver the packet by flu just before the clerk office shuts for the night. The witch at the desk tries to make a face. Hermione does not give her the chance. She reads out the filing language in a steady voice and waits until the witch stamps the receipt. Done, Hermione says, when they step back into Dumbledore's office. Now when they try to move in the dark, they will trip over this. That night, Harry dreams of rooms with open doors. He sees Barrow with a polite knife. He sees a board at a long table. He sees a feather over grass. He wakes before dawn and goes to the window. The snow has stopped. The lawn shows lines from the wind. Before breakfast, an owl brings a note without a seal. Hermione opens it. For words. Informal review continued tomorrow. Dumbledore reads the note and sighs. They want to grind you down, he says. They want to make you tired. They think tired people sign anything that looks like an end to noise. Harry drinks his tea and sets the cup down. Then we will come with clear heads, he says. We will speak once. We will not beg. Hermione nods. We will bring Rita, she says. Harry blinks. Rita, he says. Hermione tips her head. She wants a story that is true and sharp. Let her sit outside the door and hear how soft threats sound. Undersecretary Barrow does not like sunlight. We will give her some. Ron lets out a low whistle. This is going to be loud, he says. Good, Hermione says. Loud is honest when it comes from the right place. They go to class. They wait. They keep breathing. The school learns to live with the hum. Some boys still stare. Some girls roll their eyes and tell the boys to grow up. A first year drops a stack of books and Fleur kneels to help gather them. Calm and kind. The first year whispers thank you and runs, red-faced and happy just to have survived the moment. At lunch, a quiet owl brings a single folded page with a smear of pale wax. No crest. No name. 2 words. Soon. Proof. Fleur looks at it for 3 beats. She folds it once more and hands it to Dumbledore without a word. He burns it in a cup and stirs the ash with a clean wand. We hold ground, he says. That night, the corridor outside the hearing room is busier. A reporter from the Prophet stands near a plant and pretends she is not waiting. The Quibbler correspondent sits cross-legged on the floor with a notebook on his knees and a look of intense interest. Rita Skeeter is already there, lipstick perfect, eyes sharp. Hermione nods to Rita. You can come in, Hermione says. You cannot speak. Rita widens her smile. I never speak in rooms like that, she says. I only listen. They go in. Undersecretary Barrow looks surprised to see Rita. She tries to keep the smile. She fails for 1 second. It is enough. The room runs the same dance. Barrow asks if Fleur will submit to a location charm. Fleur says no. Barrow asks if Harry will commit to regular ministry check-ins. Harry says no, he will not report his private life like a quota. Barrow asks if the bond interferes with schoolwork. McGonagall gives the term marks to date and raises 1 eyebrow. Barrow stops asking that line. Hermione ends with a short, clear statement. We have filed a public petition to recognize this bond as a contract under existing law. She says. Any attempt to break it without cause will be met in open court. You do not get to say the word safety and take what you want. Rita writes every word. The Quibbler man writes every word. The Prophet woman looks like she swallowed a pepper imp. The hearing ends without a resolution. It was never meant to resolve. It was meant to scare. It does not. Outside, Rita corners Barrow with a harmless question about office hours that is not harmless at all. Barrow says the wrong sentence. She says, some unions are not the image we want right now. Rita blinks twice, smiling as if she has all the tea in the world. Hermione leans close to Harry as they walk. That will print, she says. She handed it to us. Back in the castle, the talk shifts. Some students pretend they never cared. Some say the ministry looks clumsy. A pair of 6th years from Hufflepuff stop Fleur on the stairs and tell her that their cousin married a being and no one died, and the worst part was the aunt who would not stop asking awful questions. Fleur thanks them. She keeps walking. Her shoulders are stiff. Her face is calm. Harry catches up. You did well, he says. No, she says. We did not give them the thing they wanted. That is enough for today. He nods. He wants to kiss her. He does not. Not in a hall with eyes and a story waiting to be written wrong. He does not speak the want. He keeps it and carries it as a fact. She seems to know anyway. Her mouth softens for a second. Then she looks away. Night comes. Dumbledore calls Harry for another hour in the chair. The knock at the door of his mind comes stronger. He breathes. He keeps the room plain. He lets the urge to perform pass. He does not push back with force. He does not chase the thought. He lets it land and fall. After, he walks the long gallery. He stops at the window where the first snow gathered. Fleur is there again, in a cloak, hair loose. They look at each other like 2 people who have stood in loud rooms and stayed themselves. They stand close, not touching. We will keep doing this, she says. Yes, he says. We will hold the ground, she says. We will. They do not kiss. They do not need a kiss to make the promise real. They go back to their dorms. They sleep. In London, a draft bill sits on a polished desk. The title is neat. The contents are not. A quill hovers and does not move. Someone has told Undersecretary Barrow to wait for a week. The polls were unhelpful. The last edition of The Prophet was not as friendly as expected. The Quibbler cover is a stag of white fire with a small Veela bird in front, and a headline that says, "Love is not a leash." At Hogwarts, the next dawn lands quiet. The paper owls are lighter. One brings Rita's column. She uses quotes and facts. She writes that an undersecretary suggested a location charm for a young woman's home. The school reads, "Even some Slytherins look uncomfortable." Hermione folds the paper and tucks it away. "They will push again," she says. "They will change words and try new doors. We will shut them. Keep your head." Harry nods. Fleur steps up beside him. They breathe the same cool air. They do not hold hands. They do not need to, not here. For now, the ground holds. The first curse takes a bite out of the low wall with a hard crack. Harry drops. Heat dusts his face. Stone shards skip past his ear. He rolls and comes up behind a stump. His wand is already up. "Down," he says. Fleur is moving before the word finishes. She slides behind the stump with him, breath sharp, eyes scanning the trees. They were meant to be alone. A short walk past the gate, left at the old ash, down to the hollow where the ground holds quiet. A contact from the Beauxbatons staff was late. Then the hedgeside wrong and the first spell cut the wall. 7. Fleur says, "Quick. 2 left, 2 right, 3 front." A red bolt hisses over the stump and fizzles on the slope. Another follows, lower, a tight spiral that tries to bend around the cover. "Curve hex," Harry says. He splashes a wide Protego. The hex skids, scrapes orange across the shield, and dies. "They want us breathing," Fleur says. "Traps, not kills." "Good," Harry says. "It means mistakes." A whistle from the left. A net charm spits out like liquid silver. "Protego duo," Harry says. The second layer catches the net and holds it, humming. The threads writhe, looking for a gap. Harry angles the shield like a lid and shoves. The net slides off and collapses on the grass, twitching. "Move," he says. They sprint to the next bit of cover, an old stone marker with initials worn flat. Footing is bad. Harry's boot slips on damp leaves. He finds balance just in time. Fleur does not slip. She runs low and fast, braid slapping her shoulder. 2 more spells come in quick, Incarcerus and a stun. Harry swats the ropes aside with a slice of Diffindo and lets the stun splash harmlessly on the shield. He keeps up like breath. "Left flank is pushing," Fleur says. She lifts one hand, palm out. Heat ripples off her skin. A low wall of air shimmers into place, clear at the edge like a mirage. A blue hex hits it and smears away. Harry risks a look. Black hoods. No masks. Ministry cut of robe, not Death Eater. Emblems hidden. Wands steady. They fire in pairs, then pause, then shift. Drilled. "Stunners and binds," Harry says. "No cutters yet. They will escalate when we do," Fleur says. "Where is your contact?" "Not here," Harry says. "Don't count on any help." "Then it's us," she says. A sharp pop overhead. A net of blue light blooms above them and drops like a bowl. "Anti-apparition field," Fleur says. "And a dead zone. No port keys." Harry feels the odd tug in his gut. The bowl seals. He files the fact. No exit but through. He puts his back to Fleur's shoulder. "Back to back," he says. "We," she says, automatic agreement, voice steady. He layers shields. Base Protego for the direct hits. A thin, angled plane to shave spells off to the side. A little dome against scatter. He sets the edges just wide enough to cover them both without wasting strength. "On your right," Fleur says. "See it," he says. Harry snaps a precise stupefy past the edge of their cover at a caster who leaned too far. The red bolt tags the man low in the ribs. He drops behind a tree. Partner drags him back with a jerk. "Mark, 3 front left," Fleur says. He anchors the shield. Tall. Weight on his back foot. Harry tracks the cadence of their fire. 1, 2, 3. Pause. 1, 2. He times it. Now. He rolls left, throws a silent reducto at the base of the tall wizard's shield, and, in the same breath, pins the angle with a second reducto on the tree root. The ground jolts. The shield flares, shows its seam, and tilts. Fleur's hand lifts. Heat snaps. A neat burst of white gold fire slaps the shield's weak point with a flat, hard sound. The shield crumples like old ice. Harry's stunner rides the gap and drops the anchorman. 2 down, Harry says. 5. Fleur says. We hold. A new sound, higher, constant. Harry's teeth ache. Sonic whine, he says. The air vibrates. Tries to make his hands clumsy. He grits his jaw until it passes. Ground rune, Fleur says. They planted a tone to keep us off balance. Harry answers with a low, wide finite into the grass. The whine dies mid-note. He tastes blood where his teeth nicked his cheek. He doesn't spit. Right flank shifts again. A wizard in gray steps out bold with a round shield like hammered glass. He sweeps an arc, driving. Harry meets the push with a concussive pulse. Not a spell they expect, just raw force through a shield. The round buckles. The man staggers. Fleur takes the gap and paints the ground in front of him with heat. The turf flashes dry. He trips, boots sliding. Harry tags him with a body bind and a quick Expelliarmus for good measure. Wand gone. 3 down. Watch the tree line, Fleur says. I smell oil. He catches it too. Something slick in the air, wrong for a cold day. Fire trap, he says. He looks up, finds the thin vials tied high and hidden. A flanking shot could pop them and drop burning over a wide arc. Not yet, he says. Save that for them. A tight, clean spell darts in low and left. A piercer, green-white, fast. Harry's shield takes the edge, but the rest chews the stone by his knee. Chips sting his calf. They're escalating, he says. As expected, Fleur says. He lets the next 2 stunners splash and counts their beat. On 3 he throws a wide glitter dust. Fine golden powder that hangs where people move too fast, and follows it with a narrow reductor to the ground in the dust cloud's heart. The concussion flips loose leaves. 2 bodies jolt. 1 coughs. Marked. Take them, he says. Fleur lifts both hands. No chant. No wand. Heat rolls out low and mean. It rushes along the ground like a breath you can see. It licks boots, not skin. It forces a hop and a stumble. She snaps her wrist and drops a ring of hotter air around the 2 marked shapes. Then squeezes. The ring tightens with a hiss. Both wands clatter free. 4 and 5, she says. A snapping chain of charms hammers Harry's left shield. Expulso, expulso, reducto. He braces, boots grinding in the dirt, and lets his shoulder take the push. The shield holds but flares thin. Recharge, Fleur says. I've got it, he says. He rolls his wand in a tight circle, resets the base layer, and tastes copper as the hum inside the circle shifts again. The net over them tightens. Harry, Fleur says low. On the ridge, he looks. 2 new figures, higher ground, robes trimmed like office uniforms. One raises a hand with a small wand. The other holds a wand in one hand and a silver hoop in the other. The hoop glows. Binding focus, Harry says. His stomach drops. They want a live clasp. Together, Fleur says. On the hoop, Harry nods. 3, she says. 2, trois, they fire as one. Harry sends a shattering charm that wants metal. Fleur rides his spell with a lance of white heat. The hoop screams, warps, and snaps in 2. The wizard holding it yelps and drops it. The other throws a cutter in reflex, thin, sharp, aimed at Harry's throat. Fleur moves. He doesn't see her step. He feels her shoulder take the angle of the shot and sees the line of heat roll off her skin and turn the cutter into steam. Merci, he says. Later, she says. The man with the broken hoop panics and throws the vial line. Glass pops overhead. Oil beads hang in the air for a breath and then bloom into hot falling fire. Harry's shields won't stop oil. They'll stop heat. He needs both. He throws a horizontal protego wide like a roof, then knits a tight ventus under it, a low wind that pushes the falling fire to the ring he saw them set earlier. The fire hits the ring and runs around, racing like a torch on a track. It lights the trap the thrower set. The heat rolls back on the left flank. Someone screams. The smell hits, sharp and sick. "Don't look," Fleur says. "Not looking," Harry says. His hands shake once. He resets his grip. The last two adjust. One goes high, one drops low and crawls for a better shot. The crawler throws a chain of body binds that ride the ground. Harry flicks them up and into the trees. They wrap a branch. Leaves shiver. The high one tries to go clever. He fires a silent breaker at the seam where Harry's base shield meets the angled plane. It's a neat shot. It chews the edge open. "Gap," Harry says. "I have it," Fleur says. She shifts half a step. Heat blooms exactly at the tear. The breaker hits the heat and unknits. The gap closes. "Your turn," she says. Harry breathes. He's counting the pulse in his throat now. It's fast and steady. He angles his shoulder, gives them a narrow target, and throws a pair of shots so quick they sound like one. Stupefied to force a block, then a silent Expelliarmus past the block's shadow. The wand jumps from the high wizard's hand. He curses and vanishes behind the ridge line. The crawler lunges. Not a spell. A dive like he wants to grab an ankle. "Down," Fleur says. Harry drops. Fleur slaps her palm to the ground and shoves heat down. Not out. The soil pops as the air in it expands. The crawler's face smacks dirt. He wheezes. Harry tags him in the back with a stunner and a bind. Fast. Clean. Silence falls except for the burn around the ring and the tick of hot stones cooling. "Count," Harry says. "6 out," Fleur says. "1 ran." Harry listens. The woods hold their breath. No more feet. No more spells. He keeps the shields up another 5 long seconds. Then he lets the top layer go and leaves the base dome in place while he looks. His arms feel heavy and live at the same time. "Check the left," he says. Fleur nods. She moves with care, eyes on the ground, avoiding the ring of burn where the oil ran. Harry steps toward the ridge where the hoop snapped. He uses the toe of his boot to roll the broken metal. The edges are too clean for a toy. The runes burned when the hoop broke. He can still feel the purpose of them like a bad taste: bind, hold, siphon. He hates it. He sets the pieces on a flat stone and takes a breath to settle the anger. "Harry," Fleur says. He looks up. She stands over a small bundle of cloth near a fallen trunk. She lifts it with 2 fingers. Inside, a greenish stone set in a dull cage. It pulses once and makes the hair on his arms lift. "Dark," she says. "Don't touch it bare," he says. He steps over and slides the bundle closed with his wand. He pulls a spare scarf from his pocket and wraps the bundle again until nothing shows. The pulse dims. It doesn't stop. "Ministry cut on the robes," Fleur says. "But the focus and the stone are not ministry issue." "No," Harry says. "This is someone's private toy. Someone wanted us caged," she says. "Not dead. We were close to the gate," he says. "They didn't want a corpse on school ground. They wanted a closed room." She lifts her chin and sniffs once. A small habit he's learned means she's reading the air. "I smell something," she says. "Not clan, not family, but bird. Old, faint." "Veela," Harry says. "Not one of ours," she says. "A trace. Could be on the stone. Or the robe. Not fresh." Harry files it. "We bring this to Dumbledore," he says. "And Hermione. She'll tear it apart with her brain before the curse tries to bite." He lowers his wand. His hands start to shake for real now, the way they do when the body finally believes the worst minute is over. His shoulder aches from where the shield push hit. He breathes through it. Fleur steps closer. "You're bleeding," she says quiet. "Just a scrape," he says. She reaches for his calf. "May I?" she says. "Yes," he says. Her fingers are cool and careful. She rolls the trouser back above the small cut where the piercer chewed the stone and spit chips. She flicks a look up for permission again. He nods. The heat that comes is gentle. It cauterizes the shallow line with a soft hiss. It stings. It stops. "Better," she says. "Thank you," he says. They stand there in the quiet inside the humming bowl. The ring of burned grass smolders. The air is thick. Drop the net, Harry says. Yes, Fleur says. Together, he sets his wand to the bowl line. She sets her palm. On 3 they pull. The bowl peels up and away like wet silk and vanishes with a soft pop. The sudden open air makes Harry's ears feel clear. He didn't realize how tight the world had been. We don't leave them like this, he says, nodding to the stunned and bound attackers. No, Fleur says. We mark them, we call. He levitates the 6 stunned men into a neat row, wands floating 3 paces away in a tidy pile. Fleur heats the ground under them just enough to make a glassy stamp. She presses her ring into the warm patch. A clean seal shines for a second, then cools, pale in the earth. Clan mark, she says. So my people know we did not start this. Harry conjures bright orange flags 6 feet high and sets them around the attackers like a warning fence. No one will stumble into this by accident. He pulls a small silver coin from his pocket and taps it twice. It warms. Dumbledore, he says low. The coin goes still. A minute later, a soft crack. Dumbledore steps from a fold in the air at the edge of the hollow as if the woods made a door for him. McGonagall appears a breath after with her mouth set. Hagrid comes up the path at a run, crossbow slung, face flushed. What happened? McGonagall says, already counting the bodies with her eyes. Ambush, Harry says. 7. Ministry robes. 1 ran. They brought a binding hoop. We broke it. They had this. He holds out the wrapped stone. Dumbledore doesn't touch it. He looks at it like you look at something that pretends to be harmless and isn't. Containment box, he says. McGonagall flicks her wand and conjures a thick, dull black case with runed corners. Dumbledore opens it just enough for Harry to drop the wrapped bundle inside. He shuts it. The runes glow and then go dark. Any injuries? McGonagall says. Scrapes, Harry says. Heat and noise. No blood except a bit from stone. Good, she says, though her voice says none of this is good. Hagrid kneels by the row of stunned men and makes a low sound in his throat. Smell like ministry ink, he says. Private stock on the focus, Harry says. And Fleur smelled a trace. Veela, but not clan. Dumbledore's eyes move to Fleur. Old? He says. Old, she says. Thin, like a coat that's been on other shoulders. Dumbledore nods. We will look, he says. For now, you both go to the castle. Poppy will check you. Then tea. Then quiet. Quiet won't last, Harry says. No, Dumbledore says. But you take it when it is offered. They walk back under the trees with Hagrid between them like a moving wall. The adrenaline shakes wear off in layers. The chill finds the sweat on Harry's back and turns it cold. His hands finally stop vibrating when the castle doors close and the draft dies. In the infirmary, Madame Pomfrey clicks her tongue, fixes the scrape, frowns at a bruise on Harry's knee he didn't notice, and gives them both water that tastes faintly of mint and iron. Fighting outside the wards, she says tart. Students. During term. She mutters something about fools and heroes that might be affectionate in a grim way. Eat, she adds. Then rest. They find a small unused classroom near the charms corridor. No students. A row of dusty chairs. A window with a view of the gray lawn. The room smells like chalk and old wood. Harry sits on the floor with his back to the wall and lets his legs go out in front of him. His body hums with remembered impact. His ears still catch phantom whines. He breathes until his ribs settle. Fleur sits across from him, back to the other wall, knees up, arms around them. She doesn't speak for a full minute. She watches him the way you watch a fire you built to make sure it doesn't go out. Say what your head is doing, she says gentle. Listing mistakes, he says. Then arguing with the list. What's at the top, she says. I let the breaker chew the seam, he says. I saw the angle late. You fixed it, she says. You called the gap and I closed it. That's not a mistake. That's a team. He nods. He lets that settle, then says the next part. I almost looked when the ring lit, he says. I wanted to know if the man on the left was burning. I wanted to look. I didn't. You didn't, she says. We live with the smell. We do not feed the pictures. He closes his eyes and opens them. We beat them, he says, like he needs to hear it aloud in the quiet place so it will feel real. We beat them, she says. Together, he sets his head back against the stone. I felt it when you took the cutter, he says. In my shoulder. Late, like echo, she touches her own shoulder, then drops her hand. I felt your anger at the hoop, she says. In my stomach, like standing on a bridge that shakes. I hate the idea of it, he says. Bind and drain. You did not let that thought run you, she says. You broke the thing in front of you. That is what matters. He watches her hands. They are steady now. They weren't in the field. They trembled once when the bowl tightened. He remembers the sound of her breath in time with his when the shield leaned. May I ask something, he says. Yes, she says. When you take the shape, he says slow. Do you know me? In it. She looks at his face for a long beat before she answers. Yes, she says. But far. Like hearing your name through two doors. Does it hurt? He says. Yes, she says simple. It is not teeth and bones. It is pressure. Like the world is too loud and the skin is too small. It wants to fix that by making everything else smaller. That is why you cannot let me run. I won't, he says. I know, she says. He pauses. I'm going to ask again anyway, he says. May I touch you when it happens? She breathes once. Yes, she says. Here. Wrist. Neck. Shoulder. Not face. Not until I look like me again. Okay, he says. He files the rules like spells. Silence again. The window shows the lawn and the shape of the amphitheater beyond the trees. He thinks of the trials. Hearth. Wing. Ground. They felt like lessons. Today felt like an exam with unfair questions. Fleur shifts, pulling one knee tighter. She's pale around the mouth. He knows the look. Heat drain. Adrenaline drop. He looks at his hands. He wants to reach for hers. He looks up. Can I sit closer? He says. Yes, she says. Please. He slides along the wall until their knees almost touch. He doesn't crowd. He leaves a hand's width and then sets his palm on the floor where she can see it move if she wants it. She looks at the hand, then at his face. I want to kiss you, she says, blunt and soft. But I don't want the fight to decide that for me. Me too, he says. Both things. We can still be near, she says. He tips his shoulder toward hers. She tips hers toward his until the smallest bit of weight shares between them. Warmth moves across that small contact. Not magic, just skin. Her breath evens out. His follows it. The shake in his hands finishes shaking and fades. He says it quiet because it's true and because saying it makes it easier to carry. I am dependent on you in there, he says. That's what it feels like. Not weak. Not owned. Dependent. She nods. Me too, she says. I hate it and I need it and I am grateful. All at once. He huffs a laugh at the accuracy. Same, he says. They sit until their bodies accept that the danger is over. Then the door opens with a soft knock and Hermione slips in. Eyes sharp. Hair pinned up as if she ran and fixed it at the same time. Okay, she says quiet. Tell me everything. Then give me the toy. Harry hands her the containment box with the wrapped stone. Don't open it, he says. I wasn't going to, she says. Describe. Every rune on the hoop. Every sound. Every smell. Slow. They tell it in order. Hermione writes. She asks for spell names and angles. She asks where the ground was soft and where the air pressed. She asks how many heartbeats between the hoop breaking and the oil vials popping. She writes that too. When they finish, she sets the quill down and rubs the bridge of her nose with her thumb and forefinger. This was a field test, she says, of your combined output. Somebody wanted to see the ceiling. The hoop suggests a plan to use you rather than end you. The stone is a sink. They wanted to set you in a circuit. Voldemort, Harry says. Maybe, Hermione says. But the ministry robes muddy it. Could be a faction. Could be both. The Veela trace Fleur smelled is important. It might not be a Veela at all. Could be a transport charm scented to mislead. Or it could mean someone with access to Veela magic handled the kit. Either way, we treat it as a clue, not a conclusion. Fleur nods once. My mother will test the scent if she can, she says. She knows clan from false. Hermione taps the box. Dumbledore will have Bill Weasley and a cursebreaker look at this, she says. I am going to send copies of my notes to a solicitor and to a healer who writes about magical coercion to get language ready. If they try to twist this into grounds for forced separation, we will have expert statements before they can book a room. She looks at both of them. Eat, she says. Then water. Then lie down. Tonight will not be quiet. Undersecretary Barrow? Harry says. Rita is filing, Hermione says. She has a quote. It's useful. Expect noise. Also expect a letter from the ministry saying they regret any misunderstanding and asking for a meeting to coordinate safety protocols. We will write back and say no and cite the law in complete sentences. She squeezes Fleur's shoulder once. You held, she says. Both of you. Fleur's mouth tugs. We held, she says. Hermione leaves with the box and the notes. The door clicks shut. The room is small and warm again. Harry lets his head bump the wall and exhale. We should tell Ron we're not dead, he says. We, Fleur says. She doesn't move yet. He doesn't either. Harry, she says after a minute, voice quiet. There was a moment. When the oil fell, I felt the shift and the shape tried to come. It was close. The beak. The wing. It wanted to take the air. I know, he says. I felt the edge of it. Like a door thinking about opening. I am telling you because I want no secrets about that, she says. When it comes, it is not about pride. It is about staying alive. I will never use it to frighten your friends. I will never use it to win an argument. Only when death is in the room. Agreed, he says. And when it happens, I'm there. Wrist, neck, shoulder, not face. She nods. Merci, she says. They stand. Slow. Knees crack. Ankles protest. He picks up his wand from where he laid it and twirls it once to feel the balance. Feels like his hand. At the door he stops. One thing, he says. Consent. She lifts an eyebrow. I want to kiss you, he says. Not because we almost died. Because I want to. If you do too. Her mouth softens. The fight and the heat are still in her eyes. But the edge has left. Yes, she says. Now. He steps in slow. He gives her time to pull back. She doesn't. He kisses her, light and clean. No show. No story. Just the shape of a promise that feels like it can hold. They break when a student runs past outside and shouts about pudding. They both laugh, small and tired. Later, she says. Later, he says. They find Ron in the common room pretending not to sit and wait. He looks up, sees both of them in one piece, and lets his shoulders drop like he'd been holding a trunk. You look wrecked, he says, which is Ron for I was scared. We are fine, Harry says. For values of fine that include singed. Fleur says. Ron snorts. Hermione came through 3 minutes ago like a storm, he says. Said not to touch any weird stones and that I should throw a pillow at you if you tried to nap without eating. Accurate, Harry says. They eat. They drink water. They answer no one's questions. They go to bed early because Dumbledore will call for a clemency again and because the body doesn't care about politics when it needs to sleep. In the headmaster's office, later, Dumbledore sets the black box on a cleared table. Bill Weasley arrives with hair tied back and eyes already on the runes. He doesn't touch the box. He circles it and hums. Ugly, Bill says. Efficient. Old language welded to new practice. Not Death Eater standard. Smells continental. Someone with money and hobby time. Can you tell who handled it? Dumbledore says. Maybe, Bill says. If they were sloppy. He bends. He stops. He leans closer again, then straightens. What? Dumbledore says. Veela trace, Bill says. Not live. Layered. Like a glove that's been on 3 hands. You'll want a clan elder to smell it. I can only tell you it's there. Thank you, Dumbledore says. He looks at the window. The moon climbs. The castle is quiet in the honest way tired places are. Under the hedge near the hollow, a figure kneels where the ring of burn cooled. A gloved hand scrapes a thin layer into a vial and corks it. The figure tilts its head and listens to the quiet. It smiles a small, private smile that has nothing kind in it. It looks up at the dark line of the castle. Proof, it whispers. Then it is gone. In their beds, Harry and Fleur sleep hard. When Harry dreams, he dreams of a room in his mind with plain walls and a table and a cup of water that never spills. When Fleur dreams, she dreams of standing on a narrow bridge while the wind pushes and of a hand on her wrist that reminds her which way is home. They go back to the hollow at first light. Frost rims the grass. Flags still stand in a rough square around the place where heat ran. The burned ring is a dull black. The broken hoop sits in Dumbledore's box now, but the ground remembers the shape. Hermione kneels with gloves and a small brush. She works in short strokes, steady. Bill crouches beside her and watches the way dust lifts. Fleur stands still and reads the air. Harry keeps his wand out and his eyes on the trees. List the layers, Hermione says. Bill points. First, the net field, he says. Thin lattice. Efficient, not showy. Second, the oil line. Crude, but clever. Third, the tone rune. That's old. Someone learned off a bad copy. Hermione gathers a pinch of ash from the ring into a vial. And the scent? She says, looking at Fleur. Old Veela trace, Fleur says. Not from a person who stood here. From a thing handled by hands that handled other things. Faded. It sits over the metal, not the dirt. Borrowed, Bill says. Or faked. Or run through a workshop that doesn't clean its tools. Or someone with access, Hermione says. We treat that like a key card. We follow who could have touched a Veela item this term. Harry scans the slope again. The woods look normal. He does not trust that word anymore. Matriarch's people? He says. Fleur shakes her head once. She would send a warning and her own soldiers, she says. She would not dress them like ministry. Then the trace is a cover or a leak, Hermione says. Either way, we track who knew enough to build yesterday's kit, and who could lay hands on something Veela long enough to stain it. She caps the vial and stands. Next, she says, they go to the carriage. The Beauxbatons horses snort white in the cold and stamp once. The carriage door opens for Madame Maxime before she knocks. Inside smells like polish and clean linen. A chaperone sets 2 cups on a tray with small clinks and looks at Harry with eyes that flick over him, measure and move on. Alara, Maxime says. We will borrow the small sitting room. Alara smiles. She is tall. Her hair is a pale brown, the color of dry grass. She wears the uniform blue and a shawl that sits straight and exact on her shoulders. Her mouth is soft and looks like it smiles often. Harry has never heard her raise her voice. Of course, Alara says. Anything for the headmistress. They take the room at the back. The windows look on the lake. Hermione spreads her notes. Bill leans in the corner like a coat rack with a wand. Fleur stands, then sits because standing looks like posing and she does not want to pose. Hermione does not waste the first minute. An ambush was set outside the Hogwarts wards yesterday, she says. 7 attackers. Ministry robes. A binding focus. An old tone rune. A dark sync stone. A Veela trace on the metal. Who has handled clan metal within the last month? Alara folds both hands on her lap. The matriarch's envoy brought a chest with ritual implements, she says. He brought it 2 days after the Yule Ball. He logged it with me and Madame Maxime, then stored it in the lock room. Who had keys? Hermione says. Madam, Alara says. Myself, the matriarch's envoy. No one else. Where is the envoy now? Harry says. Back to France, Maxime says. He left the morning after the trials. Alara turns her palms up. Small gesture. We did not touch the chest after he left, she says. We had no need. Hermione looks at her. Not unkind, not soft. Were you asked to report on Harry's location? She says. Alara tilts her head. By whom? She says. By anyone, Hermione says. Veela or ministry, named or unnamed. Did anyone ask you to pass along where Harry and Fleur would be? Alara does not answer fast. She is careful. She has the kind of care that can be used to hide a lot. The matriarch asks for assurances, Alara says. All the time. She asks if the bond holds. She asks if Fleur eats and sleeps. She asks if Harry's temper is a problem. She asks if Dumbledore interferes. Location, Hermione says. She did not ask me for a map, Alara says, still careful. Hermione's jaw tightens. That is not a no, she says. Alara smiles her soft smile again. Miss Granger, she says. I have escorted girls who cannot walk through a train station without men turning their faces. I am good at keeping them safe. I am good at making sure the world does not make a mess of them with its hands. Do not talk to me like I need lessons in duty. Fleur looks at Alara's hands. They do not shake. Who else asks you questions? She says. Not clan. Not school. Alara's eyes flick to Maxime and back. We receive ministry letters about the Triwizard all the time, she says. Scheduling, food, lodging, security. Undersecretary Barrow asked for lists of where the visiting students go when they leave the castle. It is normal. Hermione's mouth goes flat. Did you send her any? She says. Yes, Alara says. A form with times and places for the escorted group walks. It is not a secret. She could watch the courtyard herself. Yesterday was not a group walk, Hermione says. Alara tips her head again. No, she says. It was not. Hermione writes that sentence down. Slow. Where were you at dusk? Harry says. Alara blinks, surprised that the question is for her. With the fourth years, she says. They worked on English grammar. What room? Hermione says. The girls' common, Alara says. Madam can confirm the time. Maxime nods once. I can, she says. Alara holds steady books. She does not misroll. Hermione looks at Fleur. Fleur looks back. I want to smell your shawl, Fleur says. Alara's chin lifts a hair. Pardon, she says. Your shawl, Fleur says. Please. Alara hesitates for 2 beats, then unpins it and passes it over. Fleur lifts it to her face and breathes in once. Linen, lavender, old smoke, something else. Then, she lowers it. Clan, Fleur says. And you. No other hands. Harry does not like this room. He does not like the way the answers fit and do not fit. He does not like that Alara's face looks like kindness. He does not like that kindness can sit over a hole. Hermione stands. Thank you, she says. We will look elsewhere. They leave without any proof. Hermione throws up her hands once they hit the path. We have a trace that looks like it wants to point at the clan, she says. We have a ministry undersecretary who wants to put a leash on your house. We have Bill saying the kit is old language on new parts. It smells like a private buyer with friends in 2 places. So we pull on both, Bill says. I'll touch the cursebreaker net. See who's moved coin for weird hoops in the last year. I will write my mother, Fleur says. She will send a list of any clan tools lent or stolen. If the trace is a fake, she will know what it tries to mimic. And we look for a human link, Hermione says. Someone who is comfortable in both rooms. Barrow, Ron says from behind. He had been quiet long enough to disappear. She likes rooms. She doesn't walk the woods, Harry says. She sends. She hires. She points. Hermione nods. We aren't going to catch Barrow with ash under her nails, she says. We will catch whoever wants to impress her. They work until dusk. Harry runs a clumsy with Dumbledore and feels the push a fraction stronger. Hermione scours the library and the public ledgers. Fleur writes a tight letter to Apollon and another to the matriarch with simple demands. Bill sends 2 owls and 1 private note he writes in a code that reads like a grocery list. When dark lands, the castle goes quiet in the way it does on nights before exams. Harry thinks that is funny and not funny at all. They find the trail near midnight. Hermione brings them to a narrow stair on the 2nd floor that smells like damp stone. A draft kisses the back of Harry's neck. The torch on the landing gutters and goes out and then lights again, wrong timing. Look at the soot, Hermione says, pointing. The smear is fresh where someone brushed a shoulder. They go down. The passage opens into a small service hall and a disused classroom beyond. The windows are high and the panes are fogged with cold. There is chalk on the board from a lesson no one finished 2 years ago. Someone has swept the dust near the back wall with the heel of a shoe. Hermione does not step into the room. She stands in the doorway and listens. Harry hears it too. A breath where there should be none. A soft scrape of cloth. "Alara," Fleur says, quiet. The chaperone steps from the shadow as if the wall let her go. She does not look like the woman who poured tea. Her shawl is gone. Her hair is tied back too neat. There is powder on her hands that glints like metal. Her eyes are bright and flat. "Go back upstairs," Alara says. "I do not want to hurt you in your school." Fleur's face goes very still. "You do not get to tell me where I stand," she says. Alara sighs, tiny. "I told the matriarch I would make sure you lived," she says, soft and conversational, as if they were still in the sitting room. "I did not promise how." Hermione takes one step forward. "Who?" she says. "A man who speaks for a larger man," Alara says. "A man who sits in rooms and signs letters. He showed me a plan. He said the Dark Lord wastes power. He said the Ministry wastes power. He said the bond could fix waste if someone puts it in a proper frame." Harry's hands go cold. "A frame," he says. "A channel," Alara says. "A way to make 2 floods into a river. You don't dam a river. You make banks." Fleur shakes her head. "Once. You sold my life to a plan," she says. "I bought your survival," Alara says. "If they own the bond, they do not cut it. They do not kill you. They keep you. They feed you. They let you be useful. Your child will be safe." Fleur's breath comes quick and then settles. "Say his name," she says. "The man who signs." Alara's mouth thins. "He does not want it said in a school," she says. "You know him through his shadow. You heard him in the hearing when his woman smiled at your neck." "Barrow," Hermione says. "He uses her smile," Alara says. "He brings the Dark Lord what the Dark Lord will not ask for in public. They want you both in a room with a door that locks from outside." Harry steps to the side for a better angle. "You gave them our path yesterday," he says. Alara does not deny it. "I gave them a chance to measure," she says. "They were not ready. Now they will be." "Why?" Fleur says. "Why do this?" "Because the world hates what we are," Alara says, and the soft in her voice finally cracks. "Because laws are written to make our daughters ask permission to walk from their bed to their chair. Because your mother wears power like a coat and thinks the snow will always fall in a way that flatters her. She believes you will marry well and be strong and no one will put a hand on your throat. I have seen hands. I have pulled girls from hands. I choose a cage I can open with a key over a fire that eats." Fleur swallows once. "You think slavery is safety," she says. "I think math is safety," Alara says. "Bars plus food plus soft sheets plus a promise not to cut you is safer than a ministry that decides the word safety means you do not get to keep your man." Hermione's voice shakes in the middle and then does not. "You would plug 2 people into a machine," she says. "You would let men write schedules for a life." Alara looks at her with something like pity. "You are young," she says. "You think the right sentence wins. It does not. A lock wins. A law wins. A ledger wins. If we own the ledger for once, we live." Harry's stomach turns. He has heard arguments like this from men with rings on their little fingers. It sounds worse in this mouth. "Where is the lock?" he says. Alara takes a step back into shadow. "Close," she says. "Where the air bites and the lamps do not matter. Where they can will a thing on a cart and no one will ask why it hums." The temperature drops. It is not a draft. It is the kind of cold that lands in marrow. The room's breath changes. The hair on Harry's arms lifts. "Dementors," Hermione says low. The first shape slides through the high window like a smear. Another follows at the far corner. The third floats through the back wall. There is no sound but the low hunger. Harry's mouth goes dry. His core lurches. The old, bad weight moves up his spine. His skin remembers the lake and the sound his mother made. Fleur staggers and catches the wall with her palm. The light in the room pulls down like a blanket. She looks at Harry and her pupils blow wide. "Anchor," she says, through her teeth. He steps to her side. He feels the bond like a line you can grab. He takes it with both hands. pulls back. Happy, Hermione says. Her voice shakes but her words are sharp. Harry, now. Go. He tries to drag a good picture up by the collar. The World Cup in the tent. Too thin. Sirius in the kitchen. Too brief. The amphitheater. The word yes. It hits. He feels the catch. Expecto Patronum, he says. Silver spills from his wand and tries to stand. It flickers. The stag's chest thins and fills and thins again. It holds for 3 breaths and then shudders, wobbling on 2 narrow legs. Fleur leans her shoulder to his. Her hand finds his wrist. She is shaking like he is. She swallows. She closes her eyes and reaches down past the cold to a small, stubborn flame. He can feel it because he has his hands on the line. Now, she says, breath thin. They breathe once together like a count. Expecto Patronum, they say. The magic does not come side by side. Meets. Harry's silver surges as if it found a bank. Fleur's white heat ignites as if it found a wick. They fuse at the center of his chest and hers and run out through their hands, and the single word. The stag slams into life. It is Harry's shape, whole and sound. But its coat burns white gold without smoke. Fire walks its spine in a thin line and tips its antlers so they throw light. Heat rolls off it without hurting. It hits the first Dementor at a dead run. The Dementor flees. The second tries to sink into the corner. The stag does not chase. It stands and breathes light. The thick cold pulls back the way water runs off a rock. Breath returns to the room like air after a long dive. The third Dementor does not break. Comes down and reaches. The stag lowers its head and drives the point of an antler straight into the empty space under the hood and lifts. There is no blood. There is a sound like hot iron in ice. The Dementor tears like rotten cloth and then is nothing. The other 2 go. The room tastes like clean metal. Harry's knees shake with the force of holding the spell. Fleur's teeth chatter once and then stop. The stag stands a second longer, tosses its head like a living thing in a field, and then goes still. The light it leaves behind hangs like soft glass and then fades. Alara shields her face with her arm. Her sleeve smokes. A thin, white mark runs from wrist to palm where the heat licked her. It is clean and unmistakable. It looks like a feather made of light pressed into skin and healed there. She stares at it and then at them. For the first time, her eyes look like a person's eyes and not a plan's. What is that? She says. Proof, Hermione says, hoarse. That you will not turn this into a machine. That they will not. Alara swallows. She backs up until her hip hits the teacher's desk. She looks down at the mark like it is a sentence she cannot read and wishes she could. She whispers something in French and then again in English with the edges ground off. I thought capture was better than cut, she says. I thought I was choosing the lesser blade. Fleur steps toward her. She stops an arm's length away. You chose a leash, Fleur says. You chose it for me. Alara closes her eyes once and then opens them. I chose a chance, she says. And I chose wrong. Hermione does not soften. Names, she says. Now, Alara lets out a breath and looks very tired. Augustus Rowell, she says. He sits 2 doors down from the minister and says he does not make law. He hires people who buy things. He asked me to send him a note when Harry left the gates. He sent men and a hoop. He sent the stone. He told me the Dark Lord would be pleased but would not sign any parchment with ink that shows. Hermione writes the name with a hand that shakes twice and then steadies. Rowell, she says. Good, good. Ron echoes, shaky and angry and trying to be useful. Alara looks at Harry. He will not stop, she says. If you break a hoop, he will bring a beam. If you break a beam, he will bring a room. He does not take offense. He makes lists. Harry feels the old, small heat in his chest that is not wand fire. It is the simple anger that knows the shape of a bully who uses a desk. Then we will stop him, he says steady. How? Alara says. Fleur lifts her wounded wrist. The white mark gleams in the low light. She tips it so it catches the last of the Patronus heat still in the stone. By making a light he cannot call a trick, she says. By making the room see. Alara's soft mouth pulls down. You will go to court, she says. They will push you into speeches about love. They will smile and call it sweet while they count your heartbeats. Hermione's eyes are bright. We will bring the healers who write about magical coercion, she says. We will bring Dumbledore, Maxime, Apollon. And now we will bring you if you want to be brave the way that costs. Alara flinches like the line cut her, then nods, small. I will write, she says. I will tell the matriarch and Raoul that I cannot help. I will burn my letters and keep the ash. I will stand where you tell me and say a name. Harry does not say thank you. He is not there yet. He is still angry. He swallows and keeps the room steady. Give me the powder on your hands, Hermione says. Alara rubs her palms against each other. Fine metal dust falls in a little drift on the desk. Hermione funnels it into a paper packet and writes the time on the edge. Harry feels the cold again before anyone moves. He tenses. Fleur's hand snaps to his wrist. The torches bow. Another Dementor slides through the high glass. Harry lifts his wand. Fleur breathes in. They do not need to speak this time. The line between them is taut and ready. The stag comes on the first breath like it was waiting at the door. It blows heat and light through the room, and the new Dementor goes back out the glass like a curtain. Who brought them? Hermione asks. When the room is clean again, Alara looks up. The Board of Magical Security keeps a cart on the third sublevel, she says. Dementors do not mind stairs. Harry looks at her. You gave them permission to wheel a cart, he says. Alara holds his eyes. Yes, she says. I did. The honest answer is a gift and an injury. Cuts two ways. Hermione closes her book. We are leaving this room, she says. Now, they walk Alara to Maxime and Dumbledore. Maxime does not shout. She dismisses Alara from duty with a single sentence and a hand that does not shake. Dumbledore watches the white mark on Alara's wrist for a long second. It will fade, Alara says, trying to make it nothing. Marks do. This one won't, Dumbledore says, mild and not kind. Not the one in your head. He sends Alara to a guest room with 2 wards and a chair outside the door. He does not call it a rest. He does not have to. In the headmaster's office, Hermione sets the powder packet next to the black box and lines the vials in a neat row. She writes Raoul in large clean letters in the center of a page and circles it once. Plan, she says. Dumbledore sits. He looks old in the lamplight and not weak. We file for a Wisengamot review of the Creature Cohabitation Act draft, he says. We take the proof the Patronus gave us and we rub the court's face in it. We make them watch a light they cannot dismiss as teenage feeling. We make them say the word contract. Hermione nods. We attach an affidavit from Alara, she says. We ask for Augustus Raoul to be called to answer why a board cart left a level it did not need to leave. We ask for logs. We ask for keys. We make them produce who signed out the hoop and who carried the sink stone. Bill taps the box. I'll have cursebreakers ready to testify that this is a circuit, he says. Not a toy. Maxime folds her hands. I will stand and say I saw the light, she says. I do not care if they call it romantic. I will call it force. That is a word they listen to. Apollon's owl beats the window before dawn. The letter is short. The matriarch was told of a plan to stabilize Fleur by outside means. She denied authorizing any device. She demanded to know who spoke to Raoul. She enclosed a list of clan tools. None matched the hoop. She included a single line under the signature. If a woman named Alara stands in a British court, I will stand at her back as long as she tells the whole truth. Fleur reads that line twice. She does not cry. She sets the letter down and breathes once through her nose like someone who has been underwater a long time and just climbed a ladder. They dress in school robes because it is still term and because wearing anything else feels like pretending. Harry tucks the coin into his pocket. Fleur buttons her cuff over the white feather mark on her wrist where she gripped the Patronus too long. The skin there shines faintly. They flew to the ministry. The atrium is loud in the way of places that pretend to be calm. The fountain is a new one with too many curves. The tiles are too clean. The lift clanks and smells like old metal. A clerk leads them to a chamber smaller than a full court but big enough to let people perform. The Wisengamot benches are half full. Barrow sits at a side table with 2 advisors. She smiles at Harry. The smile looks brittle today. Raoul sits 3 rows up, turned just enough that most people will not notice him. Hermione notices. She writes his name again in the margin and underlines it once. The clerk calls the review to order. The chair gives the usual speech about public safety and proper decorum. Dumbledore rises at the right time and says the right sentence and sits. Maxime stands and sets the room to her height without saying anything. Apollon arrives like a blade in clean cloth and takes a seat where Barrow cannot help but see her. Hermione calls Harry and Fleur. They stand on the small circle for speakers. The circle hums when you lie. It is not perfect. It is enough. Hermione pitches her voice to Carrie. Demonstration, she says. With permission. The chair hesitates. Raoul lifts a finger in a lazy not quite objection and then lets it fall. Barrow tries to look bored. She is not. Permission granted, the chair says. Hermione nods to Harry and Fleur. She steps back. Dementors are not allowed in this room. That is fine. Harry does not need one. He stands with Fleur at his shoulder and finds the place the cold tried to take. He fills it with a fact. He thinks of the amphitheater and the moment their hands found the line together. He thinks of the smell of chalk in the small classroom. He thinks of the way the stag's antlers burned clean white gold and how the light had weight. Expecto Patronum, he says. They speak together again. The stag comes like breath. It is beautiful in the way an honest thing is. It does not preen. It does not pose. It stands and breathes and throws light into corners. Its coat burns white gold. Its antlers hold thin lines of heat. The air in the room tastes clean. People lean forward. People flinch. People who are used to tricks and illusions feel the hair on their arms rise because this is not a trick. It is a wall that cannot be pushed. Barrow's mouth opens and shuts once. Raoul tilts his head like he is looking at a puzzle to see how it was cut. Hermione keeps her voice plain. This is a Patronus, she says. It is made of a person's happiest memory and their cleanest part. It is the opposite of coercion. It is the opposite of a leash. It requires choice. She gestures to the light. This is a fused Patronus, she says. It is impossible without a bond that is equal. It is impossible if one person is pushing and one is pulled. If you think you can look at this and say a committee may cut it for safety, you should say it now, on the record. No one speaks. Hermione lets the silence hold. Then she nods to Harry and Fleur. They breathe out and the stag goes. Light remains in the eyes of the room. Affidavit, Hermione says, and hands the clerk the page with Alara's signature, Raoul's name, and a list of the kit she helped carry. The clerk reads fast. The chair reads slower. Apollon watches Raoul's face, and when he does not look at her, she smiles in a way that shows a tooth. Barrow tries one attempt at control. Miss Delacour, she says, would you submit to a location charm during times of public threat? Fleur lifts her wrist. The white mark glints. No, she says. Why? Barrow says sweet. Because I am not property, Fleur says. Because you may not put a hand on my door and pretend it is a hug. Because this mark on my wrist says the only contract I submit to is the one I chose. Barrow's smile chips. A buzz moves through the benches like a bad rumor that just died. Raoul stands slowly. He adjusts his sleeve. He smiles at the chair and says in his smooth voice that the ministry has no interest in separating true love and that rumors of carts are overblown. He sits. Hermione writes every word. Dumbledore watches Raoul's hands. They do not win a law in one afternoon. The chair says the draft will be reviewed in light of new testimony. The clerk stamps the petition and gives them a copy. Barrow files a note. Raoul speaks to no one on his way out. Rita writes, head down, lipstick perfect. Outside, the atrium feels like air after a storm. Hermione does not grin. She lets her shoulders drop one notch. We gave them something they cannot call sweet without looking stupid, she says. Good. Ron thumps Harry's arm and hisses ow because he thumped the bruise. We should go before they try to put you on a poster, he says. They step toward the flue. Alara waits by a pillar with 2 oars 3 paces off, not touching her. I will stand when you call, she says to Hermione. I will say Raoul's name in a voice that carries. Do it soon, Hermione says. Alara looks at Fleur. I cannot ask you to forgive me, she says. I do not deserve it. I did what I did for a reason that felt like duty. Duty can be a lie if you do not check who wrote it. Fleur's mouth is tight. Stand, she says. Then live with it. Alara nods. She turns her wrist and looks at the white mark. She does not cover it. Back at the castle, evening lands quiet. Students talk in low voices. Some say they saw the photo in the afternoon edition where a white stag stood in a courtroom and someone wrote a caption that did not know what to do with it. Harry and Fleur take the long stair to the third floor. They stop at the window where they always stop now. The glass is cold. The lake is a dark line. Their breath makes fog for a second and then clears. He looks at her wrist again. The skin is smooth. The mark looks like truth. You all right? He says. No, she says. Yes. Angry and exhausted and something else. She looks at him. I would like to kiss you where no one can take a picture. Here, he says. No one's watching. She huffs a small laugh. I meant, she says, not a courthouse. She steps closer anyway and sets her palm on his chest where the line runs. He sets his hand on her wrist where the mark is. Heat moves under both points. He kisses her. It is not a victory kiss. It is a steady one. Clean one. A promise that can be used later to hold ground. Down the hall, Hermione writes 3 more letters. 1 to a healer. 1 to a cursebreaker. 1 to a journalist who will not sell a quote. She ends each with the same line. This bond is an equal contract and a shield. If the ministry tries to cut it, they will do it under light. In London, Augustus Rowell sits at his desk and writes 2 lists. One is labeled public strategy. It has the word optics in 3 lines. The other is labeled materials. It has the word conduit and a number next to it that is bigger than it should be. Under the castle, in the cold place where the carts live, a Dementor moves its head as if it smells something new and then stills. On the Beauxbatons carriage, Apollon reads her own letter again and then folds it and writes to the matriarch. She uses short sentences. She uses the word betrayal and then the word repair. She does not ask for permission to stand in a British court. She will stand anyway. Harry sleeps badly and then well. He dreams of the stag once and wakes with warmth in his chest and the taste of fresh air in his mouth. Fleur dreams of a bridge that does not shake anymore because a hand on her wrist told it which way to face. Morning comes. Owls fly. The paper lands with a photo of light that looks like it might not be a trick. The headline tries to be clever and fails. The story is not clever. It is clear. Hermione taps it with one finger. Good, she says. Now we build the next thing. What's next? Ron says. Wisengamot proper, Hermione says. And Rowell. Harry looks at Fleur. And us, he says. And us, she says. They do not high-five. They do not make a speech. They go to breakfast and then to class because that is what people do when the war is in the walls and also not the only thing. The hall hums, but a little less. A Hufflepuff boy stops them and says his mum cried at the picture of the stag. He rubs his eyes and laughs because he said the word cried out loud in public. Fleur squeezes his shoulder and says thank you. He turns red and runs. In the corridor, a small draft touches Harry's neck. He glances at the torch. It flickers and then steadies. He breathes and keeps walking. The next fight is set. The next room is ready. The light is theirs. The gavel hits wood and the chamber fills with that brief, humming quiet that means everyone wants the first word. Hermione gets it. Petitioners ready, she says, clear and level. We move to strike the Creature Cohabitation Act, draft, and enter Exhibit A through F into the record. The clerk takes her folder. Quills start their dry scratch. Benches creak. Robes whisper. From the top tier, Rowell sits angled like a man who never faces a blow head-on. Barrow watches Hermione over a polite smile that tightens each time a camera flashes. Harry's hand is warm in Fleur's. She squeezes once, not for show. The circle hums under their feet. It buzzes when a speaker lies. It has been quiet for them so far. The chief warlock looks down over half-moon glasses. Order, he says, though no one is talking. He nods at Hermione. Proceed. Hermione sets the rhythm. Short sentences. No room for spin. Exhibit A, she says. Statement from Alara Durand, Bosbaton's chaperone, attesting to a request from Augustus Rowell for Harry Potter's movements and to the provision of a binding focus and a dark sync stone. A ripple moves through the benches. The chief warlock lifts a hand and it dies. Exhibit B, Hermione says. Cursebreaker analysis. The hoop and stone form a circuit designed to keep two casters alive while draining output. This is not safety. It is capture. Bill Weasley steps to the circle and speaks like a man who knows the shape of snares. Plain words. Exact terms. He does not look at Rowell. He looks at the diagram and names each rune by function. He ends with 2 words. Coercive device. Exhibit C, Hermione says. Healer affidavit on magical coercion and consent. A Patronus, especially fused, cannot be produced under coercion. The healer is spare and tired and done with being ignored. The charm collapses when the caster's agency is compromised, she says. There is a mountain of data on that. You can read it or you can ask me to stand here and recite it all day. It will not change. Exhibit D, Hermione says. Testimony from Madame Maxime and Apollon Delacour, confirming they witnessed a fused Patronus. Maxime stands like a wall. I saw, she says. I do not make a romance speech. I say force. It was force. Apollon's voice is soft and precise. They stood equal, she says. If you call this compulsion, you call the sun a lamp. A few robed heads turn at that. The chief warlock does not smile, but the corner of his mouth does not fight so hard to stay straight. Exhibit E, Hermione says. The fused Patronus memory, certified and sealed by the Office of Pensieves. The clerk fits the silver basin into the stand. The chamber dims. Light lifts out of the bowl and takes the shape of a stag with antlers edged in white gold heat. There is no music, no spellfire, just a steady animal made of clean magic breathing in a courtroom. Some people flinch. Some lean forward. Rowell's eyes narrow like he is measuring the cost of a new door. Exhibit F, Hermione says. Alara Durand. 2 oars bring Alara in. No shackles. She walks with her head up and her mouth thin. The white feather mark on her wrist catches the light. The clerk swears her in. The circle stays silent. Hermione does not soften the first question. Who asked for Harry Potter's movements? Augustus Rowell, Alara says. Who supplied the hoop and stone? Augustus Rowell through a private buyer, Alara says. He said the board cart on sublevel 3 would move Dementors if needed. Rowell rises like a man taking a stretch. Hearsay, he says lazy. Hermione does not even look at him. You will have your turn, she says. Alara keeps going. No drama. Just each piece set where everyone can see it. She ends with the quiet line that weighs the most. I thought a lock was safer than a cut, she says. I was wrong. Hermione lets the silence hold for a beat, then turns to the benches. We ask the chamber to do 3 things, she says. Strike the act. Recognize a fused Patronus as evidence of an equal, consent-based bond that merits contract protection under existing law. And open an inquiry into Mr. Rowell's use of board assets and private coercive devices. She sits. Barrow tries to recover ground with a smile and a smooth voice. Our sole concern is public safety, she says. If an equal bond is as strong as Miss Granger claims, surely its parties will submit to a reasonable location charm. Fleur lifts her marked wrist. No, she says. We do not wear tags to make you comfortable. There is a low murmur. Not angry. Alive. Rowell stands. He does not raise his voice. He looks at the chief, not at them. The ministry does not sanction any misuse of board equipment, he says. If an eager functionary overstepped, we will remedy it internally. As for this, he gestures at the memory bowl board. Light show. It is charming. The law is not a stage for parlor tricks. Bill's pen stops scratching. Maxime's chin drops a millimeter. Dumbledore's eyes click bright. Hermione doesn't take the bait. Call healer again, she says, and the chief nods. The healer repeats. Not tricks, not parlor. Mechanics, not sentiment. Arguments grind for an hour. Questions turn and turn. The chamber's heat climbs, not to fever, but to that honest sweat that comes when something hard is moving. The chief warlock finally leans forward. The chair will consider the petition, he says. Before we close, the court will hear from Mr. Potter and Miss Delacour one last time. They step onto the circle together. Harry feels the weight of faces and ink and the old cold at the root of this building. He does not make a speech. He is not good at speeches. He says what he has. I don't want a war with my own government, he says. I don't want to burn a courtroom to get to a door. I want to go to school and walk in the garden with my partner without someone planning how to use us. This bond is not a chain. It is a thing we hold. You can see it. You can measure it. He looks up at the top tier. Rowell's eyes are flat coins. Barrow's lips are thin. Do not make me your battery, he says. Do not make her your case study. Fleur steps in. She does not play with words. I am a being, she says. Your own book calls me this. Your law says it means I understand and shape the law. I am doing that now. I am telling you the only thing you need to know. This is my choice. She looks at the benches the way she looked at the avian form in the trees. Full on. If you cut it, she says, you will have to walk through us. The chief warlock nods once. Gavel. Recess. They file out into the antechamber, where sound moves faster. Reporters. Quills. A low, sour whine under the floor that Harry almost ignores as plumbing. He doesn't. He looks up. Fleur feels his hand tighten. Do you hear that? He says. Hermione hears it a heartbeat later. That is not a pipe, she says. The door to the corridor at the far end clicks open and 6 figures in ordinary robes step through too fast for clerks. The smell that follows them isn't cold. It's a sharp, bitter tang like old metal and wet wool. Harry knows that smell now. Sink stones. Back, Ron says. His wand is up without thinking. No back, Fleur says. Too many bodies. They move forward. There is no time for a plan. There is only the shape they've practiced without trying. Harry half a step left, Fleur half a step right, shoulders brushing, one shield low, one high. The first curse is a wide shatter meant to take the ceiling. Harry slaps a hard plane over the crowd. Dust rains but no marble falls. He drives the plane forward like a plow and steals the attacker's angle. Fleur snaps her hand and lays a low heat wash across the stone between their feet and the robes to slow a rush. Curls around ankles, forces short steps, take speed away. Stunners, not cutters, Harry calls. Crowd. We, she says. 2 jets of red snap out clean, pinning the lead pair to the wall. A third man throws a black rope of a spell that writhes in the air. It slides along Harry's shield, searching for a seam. Finds none. He cuts it clean with a tight defindo and kicks the charred bit away from a clerk's shoe. Hoop, Fleur says. Left flank. A silver circle comes up under a robe like a waiter raising a tray. The hum under the floor deepens. The sink stones in their pockets answer with an ugly throb. Harry takes 1 step and throws a shatter for metal. The hoop holder is ready this time. He slips a second ring into the first and the shatter scatters between the 2 like sand in a sieve. 2 rings, Harry says. Nested. Fleur's breath comes fast. She checks him with her shoulder. Heat the seam, she says. On 3, he says. They count. On 3, Harry throws a narrow, precise breaker at the inside edge that wants to split solder, not shine. Fleur stitches a thin white line of heat across the same joint in a fast, clean pass. The sound is small, like a bottle cap popping. The load-bearing rune fails. The second ring eats the first and then stutters. The hum dips. The robe holding them swears. Fleur tags him with a stunner so clean he sits down like a man who forgot how to stand. The last 2 attackers do not run. They pull back to the corridor mouth and lift their wands to the ceiling. Smoke, Harry says, choking gray drops. People cough. A child cries. Cameras click even here. Fleur shifts. Harry feels the line pull tight. He knows the choice. He nods without looking at her. She draws in breath and drags a small piece of the shape up from where it waits. Not full. Just enough to put heat in her eyes and edge on her teeth. Not the beak. Not the wings. Power, not form. The smoke twists. It doesn't burn. It flees the heat and rises like a pulled cloth. Air clears in a circle around them. Harry keeps the shield high to catch a blind curse that would have taken a reporter's hat and his scalp with it. Dumbledore arrives like a door opening. He does not shout. He lifts a hand. The attackers' wands jump once like something startled and clatter to stone. 2 Aurors who were here for proceedings and not for a fight step in and bind what is left. The hum dies. The sink stones in the attackers' pockets go to ash and crumble. A small, mean smell. Hermione does not let the moment slip. She points to the silver dust on the robes, to the nested rings, to the ministry corridor itself. Record this, she says to every quill in earshot. Write the names correctly. Spell them right. Raoul steps into the antechamber as if nothing happened and looks at the bound men as if they have tracked mud on a good carpet. Unfortunate, he says. Security will be reviewed. Hermione does not look at him. Good, she says. Under oath. The recall chimes. The bench files in. The chief warlock takes the chair with a face that looks like it does not want to be lied to again today. The chamber has considered the petition and testimony, he says. By simple majority, the draft-styled Creature Cohabitation Act is struck from the calendar. By the same vote, a fused Patronus, properly certified, is recognized as admissible proof of an equal, consent-based bond for the purpose of contractual protection and standing. The words are careful. They still land. Additionally, he says, an inquiry will open into board asset usage and any private coercive purchases linked to ministry officers. Mr. Raoul, you will make yourself available to the committee this afternoon. Raoul stands. Of course, he says smooth. Finally, the chief says, and his eyes come down to the circle. Miss Delacour, Mr. Potter, this court will not separate bonded pairs by administrative order. If any future officer tries to do so, you may cite this record. Gavel. Done. Sound slams back into the room. Some cheers. Some angry whispers. Quills like rain. Hermione breathes once, deep, then grins, quick and tired. We still have to write it all down, she says. But we did it. Barrow never comes close. She watches from the side and leaves early, jaw set. Raoul disappears into a side door with 2 clerks. Alara sits in the back row and does not move. When the room finally thins, she stands, walks down to them, and takes a long breath. I will testify to the inquiry, she says. I will say it on the record. I will say it again if they ask. Do, Hermione says. Then go home and sit with what you did. I will, Alara says. She looks at Fleur. I am not asking, she says. I am telling you. I will stand when you need me. Good, Fleur says. They take the late Floo back to the castle. They do not talk much in the grate. Ash taste. Tired muscles. When they step out, the great hall is being set for dinner. Students try not to stare and fail. Someone starts to clap, then stops, then starts again. It spreads and then becomes loud enough to make Harry blush. He waves them down and points at the food like an idiot. It works. People laugh because he is awkward, which is normal, which helps. In the quiet after, on the 3rd floor landing with the lake a dark sheet, Fleur leans her head to his shoulder. We did not win everything, she says. But we closed the first door. We keep closing doors, he says, until there is nowhere left to push us. She kisses him. Not for a crowd. Not for a headline. For them. That night, he dreams of the hollow without flags. She dreams of the bridge without wind. The inquiry leaves ink. Raoul tries to smile through it. Turns out badly. A week later, a headline uses the word conduit, where policy should be. Another week, a junior functionary names a buyer in exchange for keeping his job. The buyer names Raoul. Raoul sits in a small room with an old chair and a new quill and starts to understand he has fewer doors. By Easter, the board carts sit in a locked room with 3 seals. By summer, the chamber records a second fused Patronus. Not theirs, and the law that used to pretend beings were a problem learns a new word. Partner. Epilogue 20 years later. The square is colder than the forecast said it would be. A wind comes down the street between the ministry and the old museum and fusses with signs. Kids in scarves climb the fountain and get told to come down and then scolded with smiling eyes when they jump anyway. Harry stands at the edge of the crowd with a paper cup and a suit he didn't want to wear. He still hates ties. He wears one anyway because today is for other people. Fleur checks the list in her hand. It is short. It has 3 items. She likes short lists. She taps the second line with her thumb and looks up at the dais. Hermione will talk first, she says. She will say she will be brief, Harry says. She will not be brief, Fleur says, and the corners of her mouth go up. On the steps, Hermione stands at the podium with sunlight on her cheek and a stack of notes she does not need. Ron stands behind her with his hand on a stroller handle and a grin that keeps wobbling, because their youngest keeps pulling off one sock and trying to eat it. Hermione starts. She is not brief, but the crowd does not mind. She says the words she built with other people for years. Amendment, repeal, recognition, equal standing. She says the title of the new bill with the tone of someone setting down a heavy box. Being and wizard integration accord. A cheer goes up that feels like a big exhale the whole square lets out together. Pollen speaks for the coalition. She is older and sharper. She does not waste compliments. You took too long, she says to the building, and the cameras catch the minister nodding, because he has learned when to agree in public. You got here, she adds. Now keep walking. The minister signs. The gold ink does the official flash that makes the papers happy. The seal goes on. The quill goes down. A small hand tugs at Harry's sleeve. Aurelia is tall for 9. Her hair sits in a clean, white gold plate. Her eyes see too much. She wears trainers with a dress and a small necklace that Fleur said she could borrow this once. Is it my turn now? She whispers. Almost, Harry says. Remember the steps. Breathe, she says, patient. Wand grip. Stand your feet. Look at the thing you love, not the thing you fear. She rolls her eyes a little. Papa, I know. Fleur snorts, soft. Do not sass your father in front of the law, she says. Aurelia leans her shoulder into Fleur's hip and then straightens. I was practicing, she says. That is a different tone. Harry tries to be stern. He fails. He kisses the top of her head. Hermione waves them forward. One more demonstration, she says into the microphone. We wrote a lot of words. We will not stand here and try to make them sing. We will show you what they are about. The dais is crowded, but someone moves the podium. Harry and Fleur step up with Aurelia between them. The square goes as quiet as a street can. Aurelia looks at him, then at Fleur. Ready, she says. Always, he says. Always, Fleur says. They do not try for drama. They have never needed it. They breathe together. They think of a Sunday that smelled like toast in a kitchen with poor light. They think of a quiet walk by a lake and the feel of a small hand grabbing 2 bigger ones because a goose looked at her funny. Expecto Patronum, they say, comes easy. Harry Stag steps into the square with the same calm weight it had the first day it took heat on its antlers. Fleur's fire walks his spine again, soft at the edges for the crowd. It is Aurelia's turn that changes the shape. A second form steps out beside the stag. It is not a bird and it is not a person. It is a swift, lean fox with white tips on its ears and a bright, warm tail. The fox runs under the stag's chest once and then sits on its haunches and looks at the crowd like it is counting all of them and finds the number acceptable. The square cheers. A girl on a fountain top lifts both fists and nearly falls, then laughs when an oar catches her by the waist. A witch near the front wipes her eyes and nods like yes. Good. Enough. Harry watches the 2 shapes breathe light together and feels the same thing he felt the first time the fused stag stood in a dark room. Proof. Not a trick. Not a poster. A simple, shared fact. Aurelia tips her head up without taking her eyes off the fox. Maman, she says. Do you think Grandmere will stop arguing with the matriarch about the dinner seating this year? No, Fleur says. But they will argue in the same room. That is something. After the crowd swells and then thins, they slide off the dais and into the side lawn with sandwiches. Reporters try to follow. Hermione blocks them with a hand and a look. Ron brings water bottles and an alarming amount of crisps. Alara is there, hair streaked with gray, a school pin on her lapel. She waits until the family finishes chewing and then steps forward. Congratulations, she says. Thank you, Fleur says. Alara holds up her wrist. A faint white feather still lives there. Easy to miss unless you know where to look. I kept it, she says. I think it kept me. Aurelia studies the mark with the intense focus of a child who collects facts like stones. It is pretty, she says. It hurt when I got it, Alara says. Aurelia nods, solemn. Some pretty things do. Alara laughs short. She looks at Harry. I am taking a class of 4th years to London in spring, she says. I think they can handle a train station. You can, Harry says. They can. She salutes him with 2 fingers and fades back into the honest bustle of a day that mattered. When afternoon goes to gold, Hermione tugs Harry toward the museum steps for a quick photo with the other signatories. Ron herds children like sheep. Apollon talks with the minister and makes a note in a small book. Maxime starts a conversation with a curious squib boy about horses that turns into a plan to let him feed one in September. Fleur and Harry slip to the edge of it all for a minute with Aurelia between them. What now? Aurelia says, because she always asks. Homework, Harry says. Aurelia groans like a small actor. Papa, laws are homework, he says. Even after they're signed. She thinks about that for a second and then nods like she is willing to accept that the world is rude. Okay, she says. Launch me. He blinks. What? She points at the grass. You stand here and Maman stands there, and you make the little lift like a step, and I run, and you throw me, and I land by the tree. No, Fleur says, but she is smiling. We are not launching you at a government event. Aurelia sighs. Fine, she says. At home. Deal, Harry says. She slides her hands into theirs and swings them once. The fox in the square is gone now, but its shape sits somewhere behind Harry's ribs anyway. A small, alive weight that means we did a thing and we will do the next one. He looks at Fleur. The lines at the corner of her eyes are deeper. They look good on her. She looks back. Later, she says, a promise. He nods. They walk home through a city that is not perfect and not kind by nature, but is better than it was. People stare less than they used to. Some smile. One old man in a long coat touches the brim of a hat and says thank you. Harry says you're welcome because he means it and because he is still not good at taking words like that without putting something back. At dinner, Aurelia does homework and complains about fractions. Fleur chops onions and the smell makes Harry's eyes water more than he admits. There is toast. There is tea. There is a list stuck to the icebox with 3 items on it for tomorrow. He reads it and does not feel tired, though his feet ache. He feels like there is another door somewhere and they will find it, and if it is the wrong kind, they will close it. When the house is quiet, he stands at the back step and looks at the garden. The night is cool without being mean. He breathes, slow. Behind him, feet on wood. Fleur leans into his side. No words. No performance. Just weight shared. Look, she says after a while. He looks up. The fox from this afternoon is not there. The stag is not there. The marks those moments left are. Good day, he says. Hard day, she says. Good. They stay until the tea goes cold. Then they go in and close the door and leave the outside to itself. The laws will change again because that is what laws do. People will make new plans and try old tricks with new names. They will fight some. They will lose some. They will keep most of what mattered because they will not let go of it once they have it in their hands. For now, in this house, in this small kitchen, the things they fought for sit quietly like ordinary objects. A child's laugh from the next room, 2 cups, a list with 3 lines, a light that nobody can cut without walking through both of them first.